Chapter 1799. Song Qingshu's expression was calm. The two of you should know that in this chaotic world, women are the most worthless bargaining chips. Heavenly Mountain Tong Lao and Li Qiushui held their breath, but they also understood that what he said was true. In this chaotic world, for those at the top, they could get any woman they wanted. The deals they made with each other were often based on the exchange of interests, and women were often just extras. Li Qinglu's face instantly turned pale when she heard his words. When she heard that her grandmother gave up avenging her father for a man in her early years, she was disheartened when she thought that she was the only one left in Xixia. Then she heard that her grandmother gave her to a strange man as a bargaining chip. She didn't expect that she was a worthless bargaining chip in the other party's eyes. She had always been proud and arrogant. So how could she endure such humiliation? She opened her mouth to say something, but her little hand was held by Song Qingshu. He changed the topic and said, "But I can't bear to make a woman cry." "Fine, I'll help you this time." Heavenly Mountain Tong Lao was so angry that she laughed. "Brat, I really thought you were an ambitious man who didn't get close to women. It turns out that you're a sentimental person." In that short moment, Li Qinglu's mood was like riding a roller coaster. First, she fell from the clouds to the bottom, and then suddenly rose to the clouds. It happened so fast that she didn't know how to face it. She couldn't help but blush and freeze there. Song Qingshu smiled. Li Qinglu was one of the reasons why he agreed. But the main reason was that he valued Li Qiushui's power in Xixia and Heavenly Mountain Tonglau's Vulture Palace. Although these two forces were not the same as before, they could return to the peak if he manipulated them well. In that case, his previous headache would be easily solved. In that case, let's not delay and set off immediately. After all, Mu Wanqing was scheduled to be the empress, and the wedding was imminent. He didn't want Mu Wanqing to be married to someone else when he came back. Glancing at Li Qinglu, Song Qingshu added, "Princess, come with us. You're coveted by Li Longzhua now, and it's not safe in the palace." At the same time, he secretly complained that these people in the royal family were really beasts. They didn't even let go of their own cousin. Li Qinglu responded in a barely audible voice. "Do you still call me princess?" "Well, should I call her?" Song Qingshu's mind kept flashing with all kinds of names. Qinglu? Lulu? Sister Lu? Oh, why is it that one is more disgusting than the other? Li Qinglu blushed. "I feel like I've fallen into a dream. I met my lover in my most desperate moment." "I'll call you Dream Man." Song Qingshu was speechless. He had never thought that the plot would be so good at correcting errors. Menggu and Menglang still came out. If it was in her previous life, she would have suspected that she had read too many romance novels to come up with such a Mary Sue name. Heaven Mountain Tong Lao glanced at Li Qiushui and couldn't help but say, "No wonder he's your son. He's really good at seducing men." Li Qiushui didn't mind at all and giggled. "If eldest senior sister likes it, you can give birth to one yourself." Tianshan Tong Lao was furious. "Bitch, how dare you touch my sore spot?" Now that she had regained her youth, her body condition did not allow her to have children. Moreover, she had never married in her life, so this topic was quite taboo. Song Qingshu was used to the two women's fight and chose to ignore it. He held Li Qinglu's hand and said, "You're the celestial ant who appeared in my dream. I'll call you Menggu from now on." Li Qinglu blushed and nodded. She also felt a little embarrassed, but she still enjoyed being compared to Celestial Ant. Seeing her shy expression, Song Qingshu couldn't help but be amazed. Li Qinglu had inherited Li Qiushui's beauty and even had the tendency to surpass her. No wonder the original novel used the words matchless to describe her. In all of the demigods and semi-devils, Li Qinglu was definitely one of the three most beautiful women. Compared to Wang Yuyin and Mu Wanqing, it was hard to say who was prettier. She was a fairy-like character in the original novel, but in the end, she lost her virginity to an ugly and stupid monk. What was the difference between her behavior and being raped? Song Qingshu's expression suddenly became a little strange. After going one round, his behavior didn't seem to be any better. It was all Tianshan Tong Lao's fault. She was indeed the master of whoring peak. She was really good at making love. Seeing that the instigator was still bickering with Li Qiushui, Song Qingshu angrily interrupted. Everyone, pack up. We'll set out tonight. Nowadays, the situation in Western Xia was changing rapidly. He didn't want to delay for too long. Tianshan Tonglao snorted. I don't have anything to pack. We can leave any time. Li Qiushui gently leaned against the ice and said, I'm ready too. Li Qinglu blushed. I don't have clothes to wear. Only then did Song Qingshu realize that she hadn't worn any clothes. Looking at her snow-white and smooth shoulders that were vaguely exposed from the quilt, he couldn't help but think of some of the scenes where the two of them were like glue, and he felt a little restless. Li Qiushui fiercely glared at Tianshan Tonglao. It's all your fault. Tianshan Tonglao curled her lips. Didn't you see the shy look on your granddaughter's face? Obviously, she enjoyed it very much. Li Qinglu's face immediately turned red, and even Song Qingshu was a little embarrassed. Seeing the aftertaste of extreme pleasure on her granddaughter's face, and recalling that when she first came in, she saw Song Qingshu's strong and well-proportioned body. Li Qiushui couldn't help but feel her heart fluttering. She had always been flirtatious and was very fond of the affairs between men and women. Naturally, she could tell what her granddaughter was feeling at this time. In order to avoid letting her imagination run wild, she hurriedly said, Wait a minute, I'll go find some clothes for you. After saying that, she hurriedly left. Tianshan Tonglao faintly smiled. This bitch is thinking of spring again. Little Song, you're really capable. Not only did you make me obedient, but you also made me fall in love with you. Song Qingshu was speechless. No one will think you're mute if you don't speak. Obviously, he didn't want to continue this topic. Although Li Qiushui was beautiful, and it was hard to see the traces of aging on her appearance, she was really not the type of person he liked when she was young. Moreover, she was related to Li Qingluo and Li Qinglu, so he didn't have any other thoughts. Thinking of Li Qingluo, Song Qingshu's expression became a little strange. She should be considered as Li Qinglu's aunt. In the future, they would... Song Qingshu hurriedly gathered his thoughts and didn't think about these annoying things. Not long after, Li Qiushui came back. Li Qinglu blushed and changed her clothes. Then, they left the palace that night. Recently, there had been a series of incidents, so the security of the Xixiao Imperial Palace was a little more strict than usual. But they were all highly skilled in martial arts, and they were familiar with the layout of the palace and the layout of the guards. How could they stop them? Chapter 1800. Hearing her words, Li Qinglu's fair face instantly turned bright red. She felt that she had never blushed so much in her life. Song Qingshu was also speechless. You're too old. That's enough of you. Li Qiushui took the opportunity to say, You're an old virgin, so it's inevitable that you're a bit coquettish. Tianshan Tonglao said angrily, What did you say? It's obviously the two of them who have been here for the whole night. Even though Song Qingshu was thick-skinned, he still couldn't bear it. He said, All right, I'll go to Jitan Temple to settle some things, and I'll meet you soon. Then he left without waiting for them to respond. As it turned out, the group of people had already arrived near Jitan Temple. Song Qingshu was going to help them save Wu Yizi, and it would definitely take some time for him to return. Naturally, he had to explain everything to Mu Wanqing and Yelu Nancian first. Looking at his disappearing figure, the three of them looked at each other. Li Qiushui murmured, I remember that Jitan Temple is now. Tianshan Tonglao said gloatingly, Your grandson-in-law is not simple. His temperament is somewhat similar to yours. She had worked with Li Liangzuo before, so she naturally knew the situation in Jitan Temple. Li Qiushui knew that she meant Song Qingshu was mocking her for being fickle. She didn't care and said, Which capable man doesn't have 3 wives and 4 concubines? Although she was also a Jianghu person, she spent most of her time in the Xixiao Imperial Palace, so she was used to the affairs of the imperial harem. Tianshan Tonglao snorted, but this time she didn't refute. She had an insight into human nature for most of her life, so she naturally knew the rules of this world. It didn't take long for Song Qingshu to return. He told Mu Wanqing and Yelu Nancian the approximate time of his return and also told them to be careful during this period of time. If any unforeseen event occurred in the Western Xia, it would be better for the two women to leave first if things went awry. At the same time, he also told them about the lodgings of the Golden Snake Battalion in the Western Xia. Over the past year, he had secretly integrated the resources of the Qing Kingdom's Stickler Office, the Jin Kingdom's Laundry Yard, the Liao Kingdom's Secret Service, and the Five Lakes Sect. With these foundations, coupled with He Taizhou and Chen Yuanyuan's Brothel Information Network, even the Western Xia Kingdom had people stationed there. Although they could not affect the overall situation, it was not a big problem to protect and hide one or two people. Seeing him come back, Li Qiushui asked with a faint smile, "Did you go to Jiatan Temple to see Princess Tiandu or the future Empress?" She naturally knew that the people in Jiatan Temple were all members of the Mu family. Although there was no lack of beautiful women, there were only two women in the entire Mu family that Song Qingshu had taken a liking to. Before Song Qingshu could answer, Tianshan Tonglao said, "I think it's most likely the future Empress. Although Princess Tiandu is beautiful, she is a bit old. Actually, she's not that much older than me," Song Qingshu said subconsciously. At the same time, he had a strange expression on his face. "You're already in your 90s, but you say someone in their early 30s is older. Why does it sound so strange? Is it really Qin Hongyan?" This time, it was Li Qiushui's turn to be surprised. Even Li Qinglu was a bit surprised. Of course not, it's Mu Wanqing. There was nothing to deny. They would find out sooner or later. Although they had guessed it before, they were still shocked to hear him admit it. After a long time, Tianshan Tonglao gave him a thumbs up. "Little Song, you're amazing." Li Qiushui couldn't help but smile. "Speaking of which, Qinglu and I should thank you." "Thank me for what?" Song Qingshu was startled. He thought that Li Qinglu should be thankful that she wasn't jealous. Why would she thank him? Li Qinglu, who had been silent for a while, finally spoke. "Miss Mu is the future empress that Li Longzhua has appointed. You have taken away his empress and helped us vent our anger. How can we not be grateful to you?" Song Qingshu thought that the customs of Xixiao were really hard to understand, but this kind of feeling was pretty good. Next, the group bought a dozen or so fine horses and hurried east. Spiritual State was a horse breeding area, so it was easy to pick out good horses. As for why the four of them bought so many horses, it was mainly because they wanted to switch mounts. People of later generations might subconsciously think that horses were faster than humans. It was only after coming to this world that Song Qingshu slowly understood the situation. In a short period of time, cavalry was naturally much faster than infantry. However, humans had better endurance than horses, and they needed less time to rest and eat. Horses were herbivores and had a low conversion rate of eating grass. They often needed to eat grass for a few hours and rest for almost a day to recover. Therefore, there was often a funny situation in ancient armies. After the infantry and cavalry ran together for 7 or 8 days, the infantry had to stop and wait for the cavalry behind them to catch up. In history, Cao Cao chased after Liu Bei with the tiger and leopard cavalry for 300 li a day. This speed was indeed faster than humans, but it could not be maintained for long. If they ran like this for 2 days straight, the tiger and leopard cavalry would be useless. In contrast, Xiahou Yuan led an army of 500 li in 3 days and 1,000 li in 6 days. When Sima Yi attacked Mingda, he ran 1,200 li in 8 days. The unit of measurement of 1 li in the Han Dynasty was less than the unit of li in modern times. The accurate record of an infantry rapid march in modern times was that the volunteer army ran 72 kilometers in 14 hours. 72 kilometers was the straight line distance on the map. In reality, they were running on mountain roads, so the distance was more than that. Of course, if a rich country like the Mongols could equip a cavalry with 3 horses at any time, then their marching speed would far surpass that of an infantry. Unfortunately, most cavalry units in history did not have the power to prepare so many horses. It was already good enough for each person to have 1 horse. In fact, if Song Qingshu was alone, he would be faster if he used his lightness skill. But first of all, It was too tiring to run like this. Second of all, the people accompanying him were either injured or had their internal energy dissipated. They definitely could not keep up with his pace. That was why he bought more than 10 horses in one go. He wanted to learn from the Mongols on their expedition to the west. This way, he could travel at the highest speed. After all, there were still a lot of things waiting to be dealt with in Xixia. He did not want to waste too much time. The group of people headed east without stopping. Unexpectedly, Tianshan Tonglao and Li Qiushui did not bicker along the way. Instead, they tried to find out what happened between Song Qingshu and Mu Wanqing. Even Li Qinglu looked like she was gossiping. At first, Song Qingshu did not want to pay attention to them. Unfortunately, the three women kept pestering him with questions. He had no choice but to talk about everything that happened between the two of them. Time passed quickly. When it was almost noon, Tianshan Tonglao, who was listening to the gossip with great interest, suddenly screamed. Her whole body trembled uncontrollably, and she immediately fell off the horse. If she fell, she would be badly injured or even killed by the hooves of the horses. Fortunately, Song Qingshu reacted quickly. He grabbed her belt and lifted her up. "What's wrong with you?" Tianshan Tonglao's face was pale, and her whole body was trembling. She did not even notice that she was being held in Meng Qi's arms. "Blood. I want to drink blood. Master, her old habit is acting up again." "Ha!" Li Qiushui, who was standing at the side, laughed gloatingly. Tianshan Tonglao did not have time to bicker with her. She just stared at the horses that they brought along. It was as if she was going to pounce on them and bite them at any time. Song Qingshu frowned. "This won't do. Whether we can find Wu Yazi or not depends on them." Chapter 1801. Song Qingshu's attention was not on this at all. He was thinking about how to deal with the boiling vital qi in Heaven Mountain Tonglao's body. In his previous life, when he watched martial arts television, he felt that the martial arts of the righteous sex could not be compared to some of the young masters of the evil sex, even after decades of training. At that time, he felt that the martial arts of the righteous sex were too trashy. However, after coming to this world, he realized that although the martial arts of the righteous sex progressed slowly, they had a solid foundation and few side effects. On the other hand, although the martial arts of the evil sex progressed quickly, they often had all kinds of side effects. For example, the clash of vital energy in the astral assimilation great technique or the sunflower manual's cutting of the small penis. It was the same for the 8 desolation and 6 directions supremacy skill. Song Qingshu was hugging Tianshan Tonglao at this time. At such a close distance, he could clearly feel that the genuine qi in her body was very agitated, and it was showing signs of boiling. If he did not take care of it, she would definitely explode and die. Normally, she relied on drinking blood to suppress it, but Song Qingshu did not want to see her become a vampire-like monster, so he decided to correct this bad habit for her. Of course, this was easier said than done. If it weren't for Song Qingshu's profound skills and his understanding of yin and yang qi, he wouldn't have been able to do it. He was also unable to use his true qi to clear away the agitated true qi in her body. Heavenly Mountain Tonglao gradually calmed down, but Song Qingshu still looked solemn. He was only treating the symptoms, but not the root cause. The genuine qi in her body would still be restless every noon. Song Qingshu thought to himself. When he was treating her earlier, he could feel that the genuine qi in her body was mostly gathered at the hand's minor yang, Sanjiao meridian. Obviously, there was a problem there. It seemed like he could start from that meridian. At this time, Li Qiushui's teasing voice sounded in her ears. "Qing Lu, your lover's charisma is quite great. Look at the Vulture Palace Lord's expression of enjoyment after being hugged by him. Perhaps you'll have another love rival in the future." Heaven Mountain Tonglao felt the boiling, genuine qi in her body gradually calm down. She was amazed by the magic of Song Qingshu's martial arts. Hearing Li Qiushui's words, she then realized that she was being hugged by a man, and the man's hand on her belly seemed to be getting hotter and hotter. "Little Song, let go of me." How could Tianshan Tonglao stand up to her old rival's insults? Song Qingshu checked that the innate qi in her body had almost calmed down, so he didn't insist anymore. He reached out and put her on the galloping horse. Heavenly Mountain Tong Lao was secretly impressed. Putting herself on another galloping horse on top of another galloping horse, the softness was really ingenious. She might have been able to do it when she was at her peak, but it was impossible for her to do it as smoothly as he did. But that was not the point. The point was that he seemed to be holding her, but she fiercely glared at him. But seeing that he was riding the horse with a normal expression, as if he didn't notice what had just happened, she didn't say anything. After all, there was still Li Qiushui by his side. If she knew that but was touched, wouldn't she laugh at her death? A group of people rushed eastward with different thoughts in their minds. They had traveled more than 200 miles before they knew it. The night gradually fell. No matter how impatient Song Qingshu was, he couldn't drag them to travel day and night. They happened to run into a town, so they chose an inn and planned to rest for the night. Staying in an inn involved the problem of how many rooms to stay in. Song Qingshu couldn't help but recall that when he first came to this world and stayed with icy snow, the innkeeper cooperated and said that there were no rooms. He couldn't help but smile. This inn was located in the territory of Xixia, so it hadn't learned that kind of marketing method. To be honest, there were plenty of rooms. Heavenly Mountain Tong Lao and Li Qiushui stayed in one room each. In order to avoid conflicts between them, Song Qingshu arranged them to stay in his room. Li Qinglu couldn't help but feel a little sad. No matter how he arranged it, her room must be the furthest from Song Qingshu. Although they hadn't known each other for a long time, she inevitably felt a little sad considering their previous intimacy. Seeing her granddaughter's sadness, Li Qiushui couldn't help but say, "Qinglu, you can stay in my room. I'll stay at the furthest side." Song Qingshu was startled. "Why do you want her to stay in your room? She can stay in the same room with me." Li Qiushui, Heavenly Mountain Tong Lao, Li Qinglu. Song Qingshu continued, "I haven't known her for a long time, so I need to take advantage of this time and get to know her better." Hearing his words, Li Qinglu blushed. She opened her mouth, but didn't say anything in the end. She looked shy and bashful. Heavenly Mountain Tong Lao couldn't help but give him a thumbs up. "Little Song, I admire you a little." Li Qiushui also couldn't help but smile. "We don't have so many red tape like other countries. A man should be like this. In that case, it's settled. I'll go back to my room to heal my wounds. I'm also going to practice." After saying that, Heavenly Mountain Tong Lao turned around and left, leaving Li Qinglu and Song Qingshu looking at each other. "Let's go in first." Song Qingshu smiled. Li Qinglu's face turned red, and she walked over while feeling a little diffident. In truth, she was not usually such a shy person, but she could not stand the fact that their relationship was a little strange. They did not know each other before this, but the moment they arrived, they developed the most intimate relationship. As for her pride and confidence as a princess in charge of Class 1 Hall, it was nothing in front of this man with matchless martial arts. It made her feel as if she had to look up to him. Just when she didn't know how to face him, there was a knock on the door. She looked at Song Qingshu in confusion and heard him say, "I just asked the inn to prepare hot water for bathing." Although there was no running water or water heater in ancient times, manpower was cheap. As long as you had money, you could enjoy comfortable services anywhere. It was the same logic from ancient times until now. Li Qinglu had been running around for the whole day, and her body was sticky and uncomfortable. She usually bathed every day in the palace, but now she was sharing a room with another man. She was worried about her gains and losses. Unknowingly, the servant girls in the inn had prepared everything and left. Song Qingshu couldn't help but ask, "Why aren't you bathing here?" Li Qinglu was a little troubled. "Are you embarrassed?" Song Qingshu smiled and said, "We're already in this kind of relationship. Why do we need to care about this?" Li Qinglu thought that what he said did make some sense, so she nodded and was about to go behind the screen to undress when her gaze suddenly swept to Song Qingshu. Seeing his movements, she couldn't help but be startled. What are you doing?" "Of course I'm bathing together," Song Qingshu said matter-of-factly. With the efficiency of boiling water in this era and the time it takes for them to bring the water in, it'll be midnight if we wait for the next bucket of water. At this time, Heavenly Mountain Tonglao, who was eavesdropping in the next room, couldn't help but spit, "How shameless." On the other side, Li Qiushui giggled and said, "What a bad guy." Chapter 1802. Bathing Together. Li Qinglu's red lips parted slightly. She looked shocked. Even though the people of Western Xia were more open-minded compared to the Southern Song dynasty, they were limited by the times and still felt that this kind of behavior was too unrestrained. "We're already so intimate. Why are you still shy?" Song Qingshu smiled. "In my hometown, it's very common for lovers to bathe together." As the leader of Class 1 Hall, Li Qinglu had studied the information of famous people in the world. Naturally, she knew that his hometown was near Wudong's sect. She wondered when there was such a custom in Jingzhou. Even though she was puzzled, she did not question it. After all, she was now his woman, and this did not seem to be a big deal. Perhaps Li Qinglu herself did not realize that she subconsciously had a masochistic heart that obeyed the strong, even though she had always been prideful. She quietly took off her clothes and entered the bathtub with a red face. Soon, she felt her lover enter the tub as well, and her face became even redder. In truth, Song Qingshu was also a little conflicted. His relationship with Li Qinglu was a typical case of getting on first and then paying later. He wanted to say something to get closer to her, but they did not know each other at all. He could not find a topic to talk about. At that moment, steam rose from the wooden tub. Due to her shyness, Li Qinglu did not dare to face him at all. She only leaned against the wall of the tub, revealing only her round shoulders and her beautiful black hair. However, at that moment, to avoid getting wet, she purposely tied her hair up and fixed it with a jade hairpin. With her slender and fair neck that was like a swan's, she looked even more noble. Even though most of her body was hidden in the water was so clear that one could see the bottom. He could still see her slender shoulders, slender waist, and graceful back. He did not know whether it was because of the steam or because of her shyness, but her snow-white back was now faintly red. With some water droplets on her skin, she was truly like a white jade inlaid with pearls, and her beautiful face could not be compared to the first dew of a rose. "Aunt Meng, you're so beautiful." Song Qingshu couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. She was indeed worthy of being one of the three most beautiful among the younger generation of the demigods and semi-devils. Even though he was used to seeing stunning beauties, he was still amazed at this moment. Li Qinglu's tense mood suddenly relaxed when she heard how the two of them addressed each other in private. She bit her lips and replied. Minglang, hearing that her voice was sweet and coquettish, especially when he noticed that there was a hint of seduction between her pure brows when she turned around, Song Qingshu's heart couldn't help but be moved. He gently leaned forward and pulled the girl into his embrace. Dream lover, Li Qinglu's red lips parted as she exhaled. Song Qingshu originally wanted to talk to her more to familiarize himself with her, but now he simply gave up. After thinking about it, it was better to follow the method of the original work. After all, feelings could also be created. In the original work, he and Shuju spent a few days in darkness, but in the end, they fell in love with each other for the rest of their lives. They even did not hesitate to look for a spouse in the world to find their dream lover. No matter what aspect of Kung Fu he was in, he should not be weaker than the silly monk in the original work. As soon as he touched her, Li Qinglu's whole body softened. She didn't know how seductive she looked. Soon, the sound of waves beating on the shore could be heard in the room. From time to time, there were sounds that made people blush. Heavenly Mountain Tonglao, who was eavesdropping next door, blushed and hurriedly left the wall. She returned to the bed, sat cross-legged, and began to practice. However, only she knew whether she could concentrate or not. Unlike Heavenly Mountain Tonglao, Li Qiushui still leaned against the wall and listened to the young couple next door. She couldn't help but think back to the time at the foot of Wuyang Mountain in Dali. That should be her happiest time. The next day, compared with Li Qinglu and Song Qingshu, Heavenly Mountain Tonglao had big dark circles under her eyes. From time to time, she glared at Song Qingshu. This bastard had been tormenting her for a whole night and didn't stop until dawn. As a result, She almost had a qigong deviation when she was practicing. She opened her mouth several times but stopped. After all, eavesdropping was not something to be proud of. In the end, she couldn't bring herself to say it. She had to squeeze the horse's belly and directly run to the front. Out of sight, out of mind, out of mind. Li Qiushui was much more generous. She took some time to pull Song Qingshu and said, "Child, you have good physical strength, but my good granddaughter's skin has just cracked. I hope you could take care of her." Her words made Li Qinglu blush. She couldn't help but pout coquettishly. "Old princess," Li Qiushui giggled. "Silly girl, this is a good thing. Why can't you say it? In the future, you will know how happy you are." At the beginning of last night, she was still admiring the young couple next door and recalling the happy time she had with Wu Yazi. But later, her smile stiffened. After all, Wu Yazi couldn't last that long. She couldn't connect the two of them together, so the memories of the past were broken. It was unknown when Li Qiushui had returned to the bed. In any case, her entire body was burning up. She had always liked beautiful youths and even had the urge to flirt with him. However, his martial arts were too high and she couldn't do anything about it. Furthermore, he was Qing Lu's lover after all, so she was at a loss. During the day, Song Qingshu helped Heavenly Mountain Tonglao to ease the boiling genuine qi. At night, he hid in a room with Li Qinglu to fully communicate feelings. Their relationship was no longer as awkward as it was at the beginning. Soon, they became as close as a couple in love. Unknowingly, they had left the territory of Xixia for a long time. It was just like the saying, 1,000 miles in a day. On this day, they stopped by a lake to rest. Song Qingshu took out a map and studied it. "We should arrive at Songzhou in a few days." Wu Yazi was living with his disciple, Mr. Tsongbian. Mr. Tsongbian lived near the Beating Drum Mountain in Songzhou. Wu Yazi, Heavenly Mountain Tonglao, and Li Qiushui said at the same time. They looked excited. Only Li Qinglu looked normal. She had no feelings for her grandmother's old lover. She was even more dissatisfied when she thought that he made her grandmother forget to take revenge. Fortunately, she had Song Qingshu to accompany her. She was immersed in the sweetness and didn't have time to think about other things. "Monk, if you have the ability, go and find my cousin. How can you bully a woman who doesn't know kung fu?" At this moment, a young girl's voice came from not far away. Although the owner's anger could be heard in her tone, her voice was still so gentle and moving. It was as if there was an indescribable magic that could make people feel relaxed and happy. Chapter 1803. North Xiaofeng, South Morong. How can your cousin be as famous as Xiaofeng? It's not that I don't have the ability to find him, but he is now a stray dog. No one knows where he is. The foreign monk seemed to be greatly insulted. He waved his robe and directly interrupted the young monk. Although there was still some distance between them, he was born with a loud voice. Plus, the people here were all experts, so they could naturally hear what he was saying. This foreign monk's martial arts is not weak. Observing the other's pace and breathing, Heaven Mountain Tonglao couldn't help but say. During this time, with Song Qingshu's help, her internal energy had already recovered by 70 to 80%. To be able to be considered not weak, one could imagine the other party's cultivation. The foreign monk's clothes and shoes were made of straw. There was nothing special about him, but his face was glowing, as if there was a treasure flowing on it, like a pearl or jade, naturally shining. Song Qingshu couldn't help but have a strange expression. This foreign monk was an old acquaintance. To be able to wear a coarse hemp clothing in such a manner, it had to be the great wheel wisdom king, Jiu Emoji. "Is this person your friend?" Song Qingshu asked Li Qiushui beside him. "I don't know him." Li Qiushui was startled and asked, "Why do you ask?" "Nothing." Song Qingshu felt a bit strange. Jiu Emoji knew little non-phase technique, and this technique was Li Qiushui's unique technique. Thinking about Li Qiushui's liking for beautiful young men, he thought that Jiu Emoji sacrificed his beauty for this technique. Of course, with Li Qiushui's appearance, it was really hard to call a sacrifice. Since Li Qiushui denied knowing him, Then where did Ji learn little non-phase technique? That young monk is so strange. He looks so handsome. At this time, Li Qinglu couldn't help but say. After her reminder, several people looked at the young monk behind the foreign monk. Red lips, white teeth, picturesque eyebrows. Even a loose robe couldn't hide her graceful and charming figure. Should be a girl. Heaven Mountain Tonglao snorted. It seems that it was inconvenient for the foreign monk to bring a girl on the road, so he let her change. Li Qiushui also giggled. Are all monks so lustful nowadays? They actually bring a girl when they go out. Heaven Mountain Tonglao's eyes suddenly lit up and said gloatingly, "Is it a bastard child of you and that foreign monk? What nonsense are you spouting? Are you looking for a scolding?" Li Qiushui thought that she was deliberately provoking him, but he suddenly froze halfway through his sentence. Even Li Qinglu couldn't help but look back and forth between them. She had to say Li Qiushui and Li Qinglu. She was deliberately provoked. Song Qingshu laughed in his heart. This novice monk was also someone he was familiar with. It was Montois Villa's Wang Yuyan, the goddess whom Duan Yu yearned for day and night. When he thought about her relationship with Li Qiushui and Li Qinglu, he reckoned that there would be a good show to watch. At this time, Jumaji also noticed the three people by the lake. Even though he didn't like women, he was still amazed by the three women's looks and figures. He couldn't believe that there were such beautiful women in such a remote place, and there were three of them. He couldn't help but be on guard. However, when he saw the young man next to the three women, he revealed a relieved expression and strode over to them. Seeing him walking toward them, Heaven Mountain Tonglao was shocked and couldn't help but say, "He's coming for us. Is he really a flowery monk?" Li Qiushui, who was next to them, curled her lips in disdain. "He's coming for me and Qinglu. You little boy, don't think too highly of yourself." Before Heavenly Mountain Tonglao could get angry, she heard the big monk walk towards Song Qingshu excitedly. Brother Song. The two had known each other many years ago, and they were like-minded and got along well. Later, Song Qingshu was taught the happy Zen by Lotus Peanut in Tubo, so the two were from the same sect. Song Qingshu also smiled and said, "Wisdom King, long time no see. You're still as elegant as ever." Even though Geomaji was a villain in the original novel, he didn't have any real evil deeds. He was a profound Buddhist practitioner, didn't get close to women, didn't kill, and had many principles. The only thing he couldn't see through was his obsession with martial arts. In the future, people often called him the Big Chakra Cute King, which showed how much people liked him. In this world, the two of them could be considered best friends. Geomaji laughed and said, "Brother Song is still as elegant as ever. Every time, you have a beautiful woman by your side. I'm so envious of you." Song Qingshu also laughed and said, "Wisdom King, you're not inferior either. The little monk accompanying you is a beautiful woman." At this time, Wang Yuyan also recognized him and couldn't help but be surprised and happy. "Prince Song, save me." Geomaji was stunned. So she's also Brother Song's confidant. Miss Wang's heart is with Prince Morong. So how could she be my confidant? However, she is my friend and has helped me greatly. Song Qingshu smiled and said, "Compared to Brother Song, that brat Morong Fu is nothing," Geomaji said disdainfully. He then put his palms together and said apologetically, "I didn't know Miss Wang was Brother Song's friend. Please forgive me if I offended you." Song Qingshu returned the greeting and said, "Wisdom King, you're too kind. But why did you capture Miss Wang?" Geomaji was also a little embarrassed. "Actually, I met her alone on the road and wanted to beat her up. She knows all the martial arts in the world, so I couldn't help but ask her for advice." Song Qingshu knew that Geomaji most likely wanted to force Wang Yiyin to tell him about the martial arts manuals in paradise. However, he naturally wouldn't expose him. He directly asked Wang Yiyin, "Miss Wang, why did you go out alone?" Wang Yiyin had already run away from Geomaji and was slightly relieved. Hearing this, she gently replied, "I heard that something happened to cousin in Sichuan, so I was worried and came out to find him." Song Qingshu was speechless. Right now, everyone in the world is looking for Morong Fu, but they can't find him. How can a weak girl like you find him? Plus, the martial world is dangerous, and you're so beautiful. If you hadn't met Wisdom King, who knows how many times you'd have been in danger. Jiumaji was a little embarrassed. He smiled awkwardly and said, I don't dare to take credit for this. Song Qing said seriously. Although King Ming's original intention was to discuss martial arts with Miss Wang, objectively speaking, it is also a fact that he protected her safety. At the side, Li Qiushui also nodded. That's right. Seeing that you protected her, I won't argue with you. Jiumaji frowned slightly. This woman sure is arrogant. If you weren't Brother Song's friend, I wouldn't have allowed you to speak to me like this. Li Qiushui then looked at Wang Yuyan. Child, what's your mother's name? Only then did Wang Yuyan see Li Qiushui. Noticing her appearance, she couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Song Qing timely said, All right, let me introduce you. This is your maternal grandmother, Li Qiushui. This is Wang Yuyan, Li Qingluo's daughter. Grandmother. Wang Yuyan vaguely remembered her mother mentioning her grandmother in the past, but it was too vague. However, the woman in front of her was almost identical to her mother, so there was no need for other evidence to know that she was her grandmother. Good granddaughter. Although Li Qiushui didn't care much about family, this was the first time they'd met, so she still felt a little emotional. Let me introduce you to. This is your older sister, Li Qinglu, and this is your brother-in-law, Song Qingshu. Chapter 1804. Wang Yuyan couldn't help but be surprised. After all, they were familiar with each other. How long had it been since they last met? How did he become her brother-in-law? Song Qingshu's expression was also very strange. Thinking of his relationship with Li Qingluo, he wasn't just her brother-in-law, he was her godfather. Of course, he was smart enough not to mention this here. Hello, brother-in-law. Wang Yuyan was a little reserved. Clearly, she wasn't used to this form of address. Hello, Yuyan. Seeing her bashful expression and the faint glow of peach blossoms on her jade-white face, Song Qingshu thought that this sister-in-law of his was really as beautiful as a goddess. No wonder the crown prince of Dali was obsessed with her. Yuyan, tell me about your mother. Li Qiushui pulled Wang Yuyan to her side and asked intimately. This was the first time Wang Yuyan met her grandmother, so she was a little reserved. However, she still answered all of her grandmother's questions. Song Qingshu naturally didn't want to join in on the conversation between the three of them. He pulled Jiumaji aside and asked, Where are you planning to go, wise king? Jiumaji answered, I'm traveling the Central Plains and challenging various sects to learn from each other. Unfortunately, those famous sects can't even withstand a single blow. Song Qingshu nodded inwardly. With Jiumaji's martial arts, few sects in the martial world could withstand him. Moreover, he wasn't stupid. Last time, he fought with Ren Wuxing and Song Qingshu at Shaolin Temple. He knew how powerful the top sects were. He definitely wouldn't cause trouble for the Moon God sect of Shaolin Temple. As for the other 5 mountain sword sects, who could defeat him? Recently, I heard that Mr. Songbian is holding some exquisite chess game at Zhongga Mountain. I think many talents will participate, so I plan to meet the heroes of the world. I met Miss Wang on the way. Jiumaji's expression was a little embarrassed. After all, he was a grandmaster of a sect. It was indeed embarrassing to threaten a little girl like this. Song Qingshu didn't think that he would accidentally run into the plot of the exquisite chess game. It really felt like playing RPGs back in the day. We're also going to Zhongga Mountain, so we can go together. Jiumaji laughed. That's great. If you and I work together, no one in the world will be able to stop us. Song Qingshu smiled, but did not say anything. He thought to himself that this group of people had the 2 big bosses, Heavenly Mountain Tonglao and Li Qiushui. They could indeed kill gods and Buddhas if they stood in their way. At this time, Jiumaji couldn't help but pout. Little monk? Jiumaji was stunned for a long time before he realized that the little girl in front of him was calling him. I heard that you're said to be proficient in Shaolin's 72 ultimate techniques. Heavenly Mountain Tonglao's eyes were filled with excitement. She had always loved to spar with masters. The people of the 36 caves and 72 islands knew her temperament, so they would purposely lure a few masters to the misty peak for her to have fun. Now, with Song Qingshu's help, she had almost recovered her martial arts. Naturally, she was excited to fight. Jio. Jio shi ti Jio ti. Ihi Jio Jio said, Jio. Other Jiomaji thought she might be Song Qingshu's daughter. His first thought was that she might be Song Qingshu's daughter, but when he thought about how long they had known each other, he immediately ruled out that possibility. Then he thought of Zhongling and Chu Fian, who had accompanied him in Tubo, who were both young girls, so he must have thought that he liked them. Song Qingshu was startled. With a strange expression, he said, Ming Wang, you'd better pray for your own good fortune. Jiumaji was surprised. Suddenly, he felt a strong murderous intent coming from behind him. He turned around and saw Jiumaji blushing. Jiumaji didn't want to sneak up on her. Seeing Jio attack her, she couldn't hold back her anger anymore. She attacked him. Jiumaji knew he was a master, but she was too young. Even if she started practicing kung fu in her mother's womb, she couldn't be that good. So he didn't use his own kung fu. Instead, he used Shaolin kung fu. Didn't she say she wanted to see his Shaolin kung fu? Song Qingshu saw it clearly. He knew Jiumaji liked to show off. But this time, he was afraid he would be at a disadvantage. Jiumaji shouted, Sister, try my prajna palm. As he said this, he raised his palms as if he was bowing, but he did not close his palms together. With a whoosh, a force shot out from his palms towards Tian Shan Tonglao. It was the prajna palm's canyon heavenly wind. Heavenly Mountain Tonglao snorted and used the 6 solar palms of Heavenly Mountain to counter his force. Jiumaji felt the suction force in her palm strike, which was able to restrain the power of his palm strike. Jiumaji's heart skipped a beat, and he stopped underestimating her. However, he did not know where Tian Shan Tonglao came from. He only thought that her martial arts were taught by Song Qingshu. He thought that Song Qingshu's martial arts had already reached such a high level that he could casually teach such a young girl. After fighting with Song Qingshu a few times, Jiumaji already knew that Song Qingshu's martial arts had surpassed his. However, when he remembered that Song Qingshu practiced the supreme martial arts of Tantric Buddhism, he felt that it was normal. However, if he couldn't even defeat a little girl taught by Song Qingshu, it would be too embarrassing. Jiumaji moved his body and used the cosmos in his sleeve. The formless finger of disaster was pointed at her. Heavenly Mountain Tonglao moved sideways. Jiumaji knew where she was going to move and punched with his King Kong fist. Just as he was about to hit her shoulder, she moved a few feet to the side and dodged his attack. Then she counterattacked with her palms. What a good move, soaring through the void. The fight between the two attracted the attention of the other girls. Li Qiushui couldn't help but admire her senior sister's kung fu. Wang Yuyan was half a kung fu master. Even though she had never seen Heavenly Mountain Tonglao's kung fu, she could understand Jiumaji's kung fu. She couldn't help but say, be careful of his pursuing shadow kick. Jiumaji was worried that Song Qingshu would lose face, so he held back halfway through his Vajra fist, which allowed Song Qingshu to dodge it. He was a little angry, but when he saw that Song Qingshu's counterattacks were so well-timed and powerful, he couldn't help but be surprised. He blocked the attacks with his palms, and his body moved along with his palms, kicking 6 times in a row. It was one of Shaolin's 72 ultimate martial arts, the pursuing shadow kick. It was exactly as Wang Yuyan had predicted. Li Qinglu stared at her cheap little sister in surprise. Previously, when she saw that she was soft and weak, she still had some contempt in her heart. In the end, she didn't expect that she actually had such a good eye. Li Qiushui giggled. Silly girl, she doesn't need you to remind her. As soon as the pursuing shadow kick was performed, the second kick followed closely behind. The second kick turned from shadow to a human form, and the third kick followed closely behind like a shadow. It was not until the 6th kick that Tian Shan Tonglao was able to turn her body and float away. She snorted, Little girl, you're so kind. You're so much better than your poisonous grandmother. Jiumaji saw that she was still able to talk, and couldn't help but be shocked. He took the opportunity to attack with 2 fingers. It was the duo luo finger technique. Heavenly Mountain Tonglao directly used the spring white snow of the 6 yang palms of Heavenly Mountain to dissolve the finger power. Seeing that the others were watching, Geomaji wanted to show off. After the duo luo finger technique, he immediately changed his technique. Even though he was barehanded, he used the burning wood blade technique. After mastering this blade technique, one could quickly chop a piece of dry wood 81 times. The blade couldn't damage the wood, and the heat emitted from the blade had to ignite the wood to start a fire. The burning wood blade technique was a single blade technique. It was completely different from Geomaji's special skill, the flame blade technique. At this moment, he was using his palm as a Buddhist commandment blade, fiercely chopping and chopping. It was all the way of Shaolin sect's martial arts. But he immediately realized that it wasn't appropriate. This chop was not inferior to a steel knife. It could cut off an arm. After all, this little girl was Song Qingshu's lover. If he accidentally cut off her arm, it would really hurt their friendship. As soon as he thought of this, he quickly changed his technique. He only attacked Heaven Mountain Girl's wrist. The finger of great wisdom, the finger of removing worries, the claw of quietus, and the claw of Indra. He consecutively used 6 or 7 Shaolin sect divine skills and aimed them at his opponent's wrist. In the blink of an eye, Geomaji had consecutively executed 16 Shaolin ultimate skills. Wang Yuyin was dazzled by his rapid attacks and could not react in time, much less point out the flaws in his moves. Li Qinglu, on the other hand, was dazzled. She had heard of Geomaji's name when she was in Western Xia's first-class hall. She thought to herself that this person was indeed not boasting when he claimed that he knew all 72 ultimate skills of his sect. Li Qiushui, on the other hand, had a faint smile on her face. She whispered, competing with her in close combat, "Isn't that asking for trouble?" While they were talking, Geomaji suddenly lowered his palm and stretched out his hands to grab Heaven Mountain Girl's fist. It was one of the Shaolin sect's ultimate skills, the Dragon Claw. He grabbed her little finger with his left hand and her thumb with his right. He thought that if he exerted all his strength, he could break 2 of her fingers. She should be smart enough to admit defeat. While Geomaji was feeling happy, he didn't expect that his opponent would suddenly exert a strange force on his hand. Suddenly, his wrist turned an unbelievable angle and grabbed his own wrist. He knew a lot of martial arts, but he didn't know the origin of this Heaven Mountain plum breaking hand. He felt a chill in his heart. He felt like his left wrist was wrapped in an iron hoop, and he couldn't break free. Heaven Mountain Girl was not like Shuju in the original work, who had almost no fighting experience. She instantly grabbed his wrist. Geomaji felt weak all over and couldn't summon any strength. Okay, don't go too far. Song Qingshu waved his sleeves and separated their wrists. He knew that Heaven Mountain Girl liked to kill people, especially powerful martial artists. Plus, Geomaji didn't know what was going on and called her little sister. Who knew whether or not Heaven Mountain Girl would want to kill him? Chapter 1805. Hearing the loneliness in Geomaji's voice, Song Qingshu was worried that his friend would not be able to recover from this setback. He comforted him, "Don't be discouraged, Wisdom King. She is not a little girl. She is the master of the Vulture Palace in the Misty Peak. She is known as the Heaven Mountain Tonglao, who kills without a second move. There is no shame in losing to her." Heaven Mountain Tonglao? Geomaji was shocked. He had heard of this master before, but when he looked at the little girl in front of him, who looked like she was about 10 years old, it was hard for him to connect the two together. Humph! Heaven Mountain Tonglao didn't like to be looked at like this. She turned around and left him looking at her back. Song Qingshu continued, "Furthermore, Wisdom King, due to the lack of information, you underestimated him from the start. You didn't use your trump card when you attacked. If you had used the flaming saber technique, it would have been hard to say who would have one." He was not flattering Geomaji. In the original book, Geomaji was defeated by Shuju because he wanted to use the 72 ultimate skills to humiliate the Shaolin Temple. Unfortunately, Shuju also knew the minor non-phase method, and he practiced it more thoroughly than Geomaji. As a result, Geomaji's fake 72 ultimate skills were suppressed. When he was forced to use the minor non-phase method, one of his hands was grabbed by Shuju. Coincidentally, the flame saber needed both hands to be used, so his strength was greatly reduced. That was why Geomaji lost to Shuju. If it was a real fight, Shuju would have died. Hearing this, Geomaji's frustration faded a little. He knew that Wang Ming was trying to save his face, so he was grateful. At this time, Heaven Mountain Tonglao couldn't help but snort. If I had recovered 60 to 70% of my strength, I wouldn't have needed so many moves to subdue him. Song Qing-shu smiled faintly. She had already recovered about 70 to 80% of her strength, but he knew that she was proud and arrogant, so he did not argue with her. Considering the strength of the two, even if Geomaji used a flame saber, he might not be able to gain the upper hand. However, it would not be easy for Heaven Mountain Tonglao to win. Geomaji was a martial arts addict. He put his palms together and bowed. When you recover all your strength, I will ask you again. Hearing his respectful tone, Heaven Mountain Tonglao felt a little better. Seeing that it was almost time to rest, Song Qing-shu asked everyone to leave together. After knowing the identity of Heavenly Mountain Tonglao, Geomaji regained his fighting spirit and volunteered to go with them. Along the way, Geomaji kept asking Heavenly Mountain Tonglao some questions about martial arts. Although Heavenly Mountain Tonglao was annoyed, she had suffered a lot from Song Qing-shu. Therefore, she enjoyed the feeling of being an elder, so she still patiently answered his questions. After traveling for half a day, Li Qinglu suddenly said, "Meng Lang, can we rest for a while? We know martial arts, of course it's okay to travel like this, but Yu Yan's body is delicate. I'm afraid she can't stand the jolting of a horse." She didn't know this cousin, but they looked similar. Plus, they were related by blood. So, Li Qinglu wanted to take care of Wang Yuyan. Song Qing-shu turned around and saw Wang Yuyan's haggard expression. She must have been putting up a front all this way. He nodded and said, "All right, there's a market up ahead. Let's stop there." This place wasn't too far away from Mount Zhonggu in the Song province, so they didn't have to travel as quickly as before. Soon, they found a tavern. When they got off the horse, Wang Yuyan almost fell. Luckily, Li Qinglu caught her and asked, "What's wrong?" "No, nothing." Wang Yuyan covered her thigh with her hand. She blushed. How could she say that she was hurt in front of another man? However, a veteran like Song Qing-shu naturally understood what was going on. Li Qiushui and Heavenly Mountain Tonglao were highly skilled in martial arts, and Geomaji was also someone who had traveled through mountains and rivers. Li Qinglu grew up in the Western Xia, so she had a lot of experience riding horses. Only Wang Yuyan, a daughter of a wealthy family who rarely left her house, had never ridden a horse before. Although it was not to the extent that she had never ridden a horse before, she definitely had not ridden such a long journey before. Song Qing-shu suddenly remembered that some girls often said that they broke their membranes when they rode a bicycle when they were young. Compared to a bicycle, a saddle was harder and bumpy, so it was not easier. Pooh, pooh, pooh. What on earth is going on in my head? Song Qing-shu despised himself. "Brother Song, what are you doing?" At this moment, Wang Yuyan happened to be passing by him. Seeing him mumbling to himself, she could not help but ask curiously. She had known Song Qing-shu for a very long time. In the beginning, she had helped him, and after that, Song Qing-shu had helped her multiple times. The two of them could be considered to be old acquaintances, so it was natural for her to call him Big Brother. "Nothing." Song Qing-shu blushed. "Let's go inside and eat something and rest." The owner of the hotel saw that the man was handsome and the woman was incomparably beautiful. Moreover, there were more than a dozen tall horses. Naturally, he knew that they were rich guests. He immediately ordered the waiter to bring the horses to the stable and feed them. Then he personally welcomed them in and arranged for them to sit in a private room by the window. What does the Wisdom King like to eat? Song Qing-shu could order for the other girls, but Geomaji was a monk, so he didn't know what he was afraid of. "A plate of vegetables and 2 steam buns will do." Jiumaji put his palms together and smiled. He looked like Cassiopeia. Song Qingshu saw that his tone was normal and couldn't be faked. He couldn't help but admire him. He was from the Tantric Buddhism, which didn't have as many taboos as the Zen Buddhism in the Central Plains. He still kept fasting. In many ways, he was indeed a respectable monk. Give this master a few exquisite vegetarian dishes and a pot of good tea. Song Qingshu obviously wouldn't let him eat the vegetables and steamed buns. Jiumaji nodded slightly. Thank you, Brother Song. He didn't refuse. It was obvious that other than his obsession with martial arts, his mind had reached a state of tranquility. Just then, another group of people came into the tavern. The waiter couldn't help but ask, "What day is it today? Why are there so many masters?" Song Qingshu and the others looked over curiously. Right at that moment, a surprised voice suddenly rang out from the doorway. "Miss Wang." Then, a misty figure rushed towards Wang Yuyan. Jiumaji frowned. In his opinion, Wang Yuyan was close to Song Qingshu. She might be his future sister-in-law. How could he let another man get close to her? He waved his hand, and a flaming knife slashed towards the figure. The figure twisted at an inconceivable angle, narrowly dodging the saber. However, this time, he could no longer stop his momentum, and he directly rammed into Wang Yuyan. "Miss Wang, get out of the way!" But Wang Yuyan didn't know martial arts. How could she dodge? Chapter 1806. Jiumaji's eyes widened to the size of bells. His opponent's footwork was really strange. Just now, he was confident that his attack would miss, but this woman easily subdued him. That cloud sleeve seemed to have the ability to hit acupuncture points from afar, which was even better than his controlling crane technique. But this was not the key point. The key point was that the timing of her attack was really embarrassing. He thought that when facing such a high level of Qigong, he would never be able to do it as accurately as she did. Jiumaji only regarded Heavenly Mountain Tong Lao as a master, so he had never taken this delicate woman seriously. He didn't expect that the woman's martial arts seemed to be even better than his. Of course, he was belittling himself because he didn't know that Li Qiushui had been practicing wave-like subtle steps for decades and was very familiar with its changes. That was why she was able to stop him so easily. Suddenly, Jiumaji was a little envious of Song Qingshu. He was surrounded by many beautiful women, but he didn't expect that all of them would be so good at martial arts. What would other men do? Fortunately, I have become a monk, so I don't have to worry about these things. While Jiumaji was shocked, Li Qiushui was also shocked. When she saw that he was defeated by Heavenly Mountain Tong Lao, who only had 70 to 80% of her power, she still looked down on him. Especially when she saw that his so-called 72 ultimate skills were actually driven by the little phaseless technique. His little phaseless technique was obviously not complete, so he would only be suppressed to death if he met her. But just now, when he slashed through the air was filled with saber energy, which made her very alert. On the side, Heavenly Mountain Tong Lao also stared at the long black saber mark on the floor. She secretly clicked her tongue. Is this the flaming saber that Song Qingshu mentioned before? If he had used this from the beginning, it would have been really difficult for me. "Miss Wang, are you okay?" At this time, an earnest voice interrupted their thoughts. "I'm fine." Looking at Duanyu, who fell down in front of her, Wang Yin thought, "I'm sitting here, but you fell down and asked me if I'm okay?" Seeing Wang Yuyin, Duanyu's whole body was a little soft, and he didn't know where to start. Li Qiushui spoke at this time. "Where did young master learn the water-treading subtle steps from?" Duanyu was just about to reply when he suddenly caught sight of Li Qiushui's appearance, and he felt as though he had been struck by lightning. Big sister goddess?" Li Qiushui was also taken aback, and then burst into laughter. "What did Gongzi call me?" "Fairy sister. You are a fairy sister." As if possessed, Duanyu didn't even spare a glance at Wang Yuyin as he scrambled toward Li Qiushui. "You really exist." Previously, he had called Wang Yuyin fairy sister because she looked somewhat similar to the jade statue. However, After taking a closer look, he could still see that the two of them were very different. The eyes of the jade statue were gentle and charming, while Wang Yuyin was more of a young girl's innocence. He was so deeply obsessed that he could naturally tell the difference between the two. Now that he had seen the true master, how could he not be wild with joy? Fairy sister, Duan Yu misses you so much. Duan Yu's eyes were dazed, and he could only think of the person in front of him as the jade statue in the infinite jade cave. Subconsciously, he reached out to touch the other party's face. Back then, he had obtained the silk cloth at the bottom of the jade statue's feet, and it recorded the dark north divine art, water treading subtle steps, and other martial arts. However, he had never been fond of martial arts, so he didn't pay too much attention to them. On the other hand, the diagram on the manual was a naked portrait of the fairy sister, and all the acupoints on her body were clearly marked. Duan Yu happened to be at the age where he was full of vigor, so he naturally couldn't bear to part with such a painting. It had accompanied him for countless days and nights, so when he saw the real person, he lost his composure. Although Li Qiushui had always been flirtatious, she wasn't the kind of woman who would allow herself to be touched by a random stranger. She took a slight step back, avoiding the other party's hand. Could it be that Gongzi has mistaken me for someone else? Duan Yu muttered to himself. I've been thinking about this fairy sister day and night, and I've never dared to forget her for a single day. How could I possibly be mistaken? By the side, Wang Yin couldn't help but frown as she watched him pester her grandmother. She had always thought that Duan Yu was deeply in love with her, and although it was hard for her to accept his feelings, she was still touched by it. But now, she finally understood that it was only because she resembled the fairy sister in his heart that he had taken a liking to her. She sighed inwardly, but she didn't say anything. Crown Prince. At this moment, the few henchmen who had followed Duan Yu and also came to their senses. Seeing their crown prince pestering a lady like a lecher, they shook their heads. It was truly too embarrassing. But it was a pity that Duan Yu's infatuation with the fairy sister had already gone berserk, so how could he listen to their consolation? Amipa. Suddenly, a Buddhist chant rang out, sounding like the bell of a monastery in the morning. Everyone in the inn couldn't help but feel their hearts skip a beat. Duan Yu's eyes instantly regained their clarity as he hurriedly bowed and said, Duan Yu, please forgive me for my rudeness just now. Although he wasn't as fanatical as before, the eagerness in his eyes hadn't lessened. Li Qiushui covered her mouth and laughed. Why did you call me fairy sister? And why do you know how to tread water? This was originally Duan Yu's biggest secret, but since the fairy sister had asked him about it, he naturally didn't hide it and told her everything about how he had accidentally fallen into the cave. Hearing that he had really kowtowed 1,000 times in front of the jade statue, Li Qiushui giggled. What an idiot. Back then, I was just acting on a whim and purposely designed a trap to make things difficult for people. I didn't think that someone would really kowtow to me. When she heard that he had started cultivating from the martial arts recorded in the painting, Li Qiushui smiled faintly and asked, Have you seen the things in the painting? Duan Yu blushed when he thought about how the fairy sister in the painting was naked. He answered hesitantly, I didn't mean to be rude. I had no choice but to cultivate because I wanted to save someone. Song Qingshu naturally had no time to care about Li Qiushui teasing the little fresh meat. Instead, he turned to look at the inn's entrance. The inner energy of the calling of Buddha earlier was vigorous, and most importantly, it was neutral and calm. It was not as aggressive as the lion's roar, but it could wake Duan Yu up. It was evident that the skill belonged to an expert among experts. Several monks entered the inn, led by 2 old monks. One of them looked rather scary, and Song Qingshu recognized him as Master Kurong from the Heavenly Dragon Temple. Back when he first came to this world, he had the intention to obtain the 6 Meridians Divine Sword Manual, and he even had a fight with Master Kurong and a few other eminent monks. The Master's martial arts cultivation base was high, but it had not reached the top-notch level in Jianghu. Hence, it was evident that the calling of Buddha earlier did not come from him. When Yangming shifted his gaze to the side, he saw a benevolent-looking old monk standing there. The old monk had long white eyebrows hanging down from the corners of his eyes, and although there was a hint of sorrow between his eyebrows, he looked graceful and noble. Does the Heavenly Dragon Temple have such an expert? Song Qingshu found it strange. Chapter 1807. Even though Duan Yu was reluctant to leave his fairy sister's side, he dared not disobey her. He could not help but mumble, yes. Then he returned to Master Kurong's side. Zhu Danshun, Chu Wanli, and the others had often advised Duan Yu to pester Wang Yuyan. Even so, they were only the Duan family's servants, whereas Duan Yu was the crown prince, so one could imagine how ineffective their advice was. Master Kurong was different. Even Duan Zhengming and Duan Zhengchun had to bow to him as a junior. Duan Yu was saved by the master in the past, and he was also the one who taught him the Six Pulses divine sword, so he was considered half a master to the master. As such, the master dared not act rashly in front of the master. Once Duan Yu returned to Master Kurong's side, he secretly sighed a breath of relief. Previously, Jiumaji caused a ruckus in the Heavenly Dragon Temple and almost captured Emperor Baoding. In the end, he captured Duan Yu, causing the Duan family from Dali to hold back. He was afraid that the same thing would happen again. Great Will Wisdom King, we meet again. Ku Rong pressed his palms together and bowed. Jiumaji returned the gesture and was still in high spirits. I was wondering who it was. It's you, Zen Master Kurong. Why didn't you meditate in the Heavenly Dragon Temple? Why did you come to the Central Plains? Master Kurong responded, the Central Plains is filled with devils and devils, so of course, I'm here to get rid of them. Oh, Jiumaji raised his eyebrows. I was really disappointed when I experienced your temple's Six Pulses divine sword formation in Dali. Besides, your martial nephews aren't here this time, so I can't set up the formation. I'm afraid that it's beyond my ability to get rid of devils and defend the path. The martial nephews he was referring to were Duan Zhengming and Duan Zhengchuan's martial uncles. In terms of seniority, Duan Zhengming and Duan Zhengchun were Duan Zhengming's uncles, whereas Ku Rong was Duan Zhengming's martial uncle. Master Kurong looked calm. Getting rid of devils and defending the path relies on profound Buddhist enlightenment. Wisdom King clearly has a profound Buddhist enlightenment, but you're too obsessed with martial arts, so I'm afraid that you're too obsessed. Jiumaji waved his loose monk robe and interrupted, Master, you use your mouth to eliminate demons and defend the Tao. Aren't you just thinking for your own good? Song Qingshu, who was standing aside, secretly laughed. Jiumaji was not only highly skilled in martial arts, but he was also a famous monk in Tubo. He often gave sermons and could be said to be eloquent and good at using sophistry. How could Ku Rong, who stayed at home all year round, win against him? If Jiumaji were to live in the future, he would definitely be a famous troll on the forum, and one would be convinced by his words. Ku Rong had been cultivating Buddhist meditation for his entire life, so he would not be defeated by a few words from Jiumaji. On the other hand, Duan Yu was different. He had suffered a few setbacks in Jiumaji's hands and was even almost burned by the man as a living sword manual, so he did not have a good impression of the man at all. Moreover, he noticed that Wang Yian was dressed like a little monk, which was evident that she was captured by Jiumaji. Moreover, the fairy elder sister sitting next to her was most likely captured by Jiumaji as well. Duan Yu was filled with lofty sentiments as he thought, I must rescue the two fairy elder sisters. Wait, the young lady next to them looks like the fairy elder sister too. Could she be Miss Wang's sister? But I've never heard Azu, Abi, and the others mention her. While Duan Yu's imagination was running wild, he saw Jiumaji proudly snatched by Kurong away from him. Finally, he could not help but say, Jiumaji, didn't you want to see the Six Meridians magic sword? Today, I'll let you see the power of the Duan family of Dali. As he said this, he pointed his finger at the sword and shot it out. With the fairy elder sisters standing next to him, he was filled with lofty sentiments. The Six Meridians magic sword, which usually did not work, had actually succeeded in an instant. Noticing that an invisible sword chi was shooting toward him, Jiumaji's expression changed slightly. He instantly used his lightness skill to leave the place. Immediately, the pillar behind him was filled with sawdust, and a deep hole appeared on it. 6 Meridian's magic sword. Li Qiushui exclaimed. Back then, when she and Wu Yazi collected martial arts from all over the world, their biggest regret was that they did not find the Shaolin Temple's muscle-changing scripture, the beggar sect's 18 dragon-subduing palms, and the dog-beating stick technique, as well as the Duan family of Dali's 6 Meridian's magic sword. Now that she could witness it with her own eyes, she was able to make up for that regret. On the side, Tianshan Tonglao was also watching the fight without blinking. She was also shocked. I heard that cultivating the 6 Meridian's magic sword requires an extremely profound inner energy. Even Master Kurong, who has been cultivating for decades, could not master it and could only focus on one meridian. This young man looks even younger than Song, but he managed to master the whole sword technique. I haven't left Mount Tianshan for decades. Are the martial arts of the younger generation in the Central Plains so great now? When Tianshan Tonglao recalled how she was defeated by Song Qingshu in the past, and how powerful the young man was today, she could not help but doubt her life. Even Li Qinglu widened her eyes at the legendary 6 Meridian's magic sword, as she was afraid that she would miss a single detail. On the other hand, Wang Yuyin, who had seen it countless times, did not pay much attention to it. She could not help but look at Song Qingshu next to her, but she noticed that he was leisurely sipping his tea as though the fight did not attract him at all. Big brother Song, why are you so relaxed? Wang Yuyin blinked her beautiful eyes and looked curiously at the man next to her. Miss Wang, you're not watching either, are you? Song Qingshu smiled and poured her a cup of tea from the teapot. Wang Yuyin blushed. She subconsciously looked at her cousin next to her and noticed that her cousin was staring at the two people in the field. She sighed a breath of relief, but to cover up her embarrassment, she could not help but ask, Big brother Song, who do you think will win? Song Qingshu chuckled. Duan Yu's allocations are high, but his martial arts foundation is too shallow. As compared to King Ming, he's far behind. As soon as he finished speaking, Jiumaji had already flashed to Duan Yu's side and clawed at his shoulder. If he managed to grab hold of Duan Yu's shoulder, Jiumaji would no longer be able to use his skills. Jiumaji and Duan Yu were old acquaintances, so he knew the strengths and weaknesses of Duan Yu's martial arts. Therefore, he did not use his flaming blade to fight Duan Yu head-on. Since the first strike, he had been using his Qin Gong to dodge Duan Yu's sword Qi while closing the distance between them. After dodging a few strikes, his figure flashed in a strange manner. Many people only saw a blur, and then he had already closed in on Duan Yu. Duan Yu panicked. He used the 6 Meridian's magic sword with both hands in an attempt to force Jiumaji away. However, the more panicked he was, the more his hands would not listen to him. Before, he could still shoot out sword Qi, but now he could not even use his sword Qi. Jiumaji snorted and directly grabbed Duan Yu's clavicle acupoint, waiting to subdue Jiumaji with a burst of force. At that moment, he felt his hand go numb, and he hurriedly moved away from Duan Yu. He had always felt that the white-browed old monk next to Ku Ron was rather unfathomable, so he was secretly on guard. Even so, he was almost hit. Bob, very good, very good. The white-browed old monk put his palms together. He did not seize the opportunity to attack Jiumaji, and it was as if he had not moved at all. Jiumaji was rather impressed by the old monk's graceful bearing and calm attacks, so he returned the greeting and said, I heard that the Duan family's yang finger is divided into 9 grades. The Sky Dragon Temple's Benin Abbot has only cultivated to the 4th grade, and Master Ku Ron's cultivation base is slightly higher, but he's only at the 3rd grade. As compared to you, his yang finger skill is far inferior. Could it be that you've cultivated to the legendary 1st grade? The old monk was stunned, but he quickly answered, Wisdom King, you're indeed familiar with the martial arts in the world, but the 1st grade of the yang finger is unpredictable, so I dare not claim that I've achieved it. I've been cultivating hard for decades, but I've only seen the threshold, and I'm still far from the real 1st grade. Chapter 1808. Master Bai Mei was speechless as he did not know how to explain himself. Song Qingshu laughed. Wisdom King, you might not know this, but another important reason why Master Yiding's martial arts can reach such a high state is that he learned the Xiantian technique from Wang Chongyang, which is a divine power. He didn't just rely on the Sun Finger's power. Even though Master Bai Mei did not introduce himself, the Duan family's attainment in the Sun Finger was greater than Master Kurong's. Moreover, he looked kind and elegant, so it was obvious who he was. Upon hearing Yangming mention the Xiantian technique, Master Yiding was moved. He could not help but recall what happened back then, and he sighed. Back then, when he learned that Wang Chongyang taught him the Xiantian technique, he, who was obsessed with martial arts, was overjoyed. Now that he thought about it, it was the beginning of the tragedy. Ah, your South Emperor Yiding, one of the 5 unparalleled masters of the Central Plains. No wonder you can use the Sun Finger so well. I've been looking forward to meeting you for a long time. In actuality, Jumaji had a vague guess, and now that it was confirmed, he could not help but look eager. It was worth noting that he had been challenging masters from various sects in the Central Plains all these years, and he had been in the limelight. How could he not be tempted to meet a famous figure like the South Emperor? Greetings, Wisdom King. You've swept through the Sky Dragon Temple in the battle, and you defeated all the eminent monks with your 72 ultimate techniques in the Shaolin Temple. I've seen you today. You truly live up to your reputation. Master Yiding returned the greeting. These words really tickled Geomaji's itch. These 2 battles were the 2 battles that he was most proud of in his life. It could be said that he was in the limelight. It was fine if others praised him, but to be praised by someone like South Deity, that feeling was as refreshing as eating the fruit of life. At that moment, Duan Yu also recognized Song Qingshu, so he could not help but ask, Prince Song, you're a famous figure now, so why are you still colluding with the unorthodox path? Song Qingshu was not offended at all. So, Sister Fairy is also an unorthodox path to you. In actuality, he was right. Whether it was Li Qiushui or Tianshan Tonglao, they were indeed influential figures in the evil path. On the contrary, Jumaji, who looked the fiercest, was as pure as a white flower compared to them. In fact, even Li Qinglu, who was the leader of the Class 1 Hall, was more ruthless than him. Unfortunately, most people in this world judge people by their appearance. Heavenly Mountain Tonglao was pure and cute, Li Qiushui was beautiful and flirtatious, and Li Qinglu was elegant and beautiful. It was hard to associate them with the word devil. As a result, Geomaji attracted all the hatred. Duan Yu hurriedly waved his hand and said, No, no, no. How could Fairy's sister be a heretic? That's not what I mean. Seeing him hurriedly explain, Song Qingshu smiled faintly. How would young Master Duan know that she isn't? It seems that you're just judging people by their appearance. Actually, Duan Yu had always been an eloquent person. In the whole of Dali, few could out-argue him when it came to Buddhism. However, every time it came to the fairy sister, he would become a completely different person. He became silly and clumsy. Master Kurong spoke at that moment. Back then, Wisdom King went to the temple to snatch the 6 Pulses Divine Sword's sword manual. Then young Master snuck in the middle of the night to snatch it. It's true that both of you are birds of the same feather. After all, Duan Yu was Dali's crown prince. Seeing as he was embarrassed by Song Qingshu's words, Kurong could not help but protect him. Geomaji looked at Song Qingshu in shock. Brother Song, you've also looked for the 6 Pulses Divine sword manual. Song Qingshu grinned. The 6 Pulses Divine sword's famous indeed, and I was only curious about it back then. Following that, he said to Kurong, Master, I don't agree with what you said about snatching it by force. Back then, Wisdom King exchanged 3 ultimate skills with your temple, and I also exchanged a divine technique like the 90 manual with you. No matter how I look at it, it's a fair trade, but you're not willing to do it. As the saying goes, benevolence and righteousness prevail, even if the deal fails. So why do you have to speak ill of me? You've ruined my cultivation all these years. The 9 manual? Master Yiding's eyes flickered when he heard the name. Back then, The few of them fought fiercely for the book at the peak of Mount Hua, but they did not expect the young man in front of them to use it as a bargaining chip to trade it away. Nonetheless, his obsession with the 9-in manual was gone, so he quickly calmed down after feeling a ripple in his heart. Master Corone was stunned, but he quickly joined his palms together. Umipa, I've been guarding the Six Pulses Divine Sword Manual all these years, but I've unknowingly become obsessed with it. I couldn't help but lose my composure after seeing the two of you. Fortunately, you reminded me, young master. Song Qingshu was moved too. Master, you're so honest. You're worthy of being an accomplished monk indeed. All of a sudden, a sonorous voice was heard coming from the door. As the saying goes, a gentleman deceives his enemy with methods. Master, you mustn't be tricked by this young fella. The voice sounded like a Buddhist lion's roar, causing the beams in the inn to shake. The other people in the inn were appalled as they wondered who had such profound inner energy. When they turned to look, they saw a tall and glowing monk walking in. He was followed by a few other monks, some of whom were elderly, and some of whom were from the younger generation. Those with sharp eyes could tell that their monk robes were very different from Kurong and Yiding's. They were the Shaolin Temple's attire. Song Qingshu could not help but grumble, "You're really haunting me. Why do I always run into you?" He had recognized them. The glowing monk was naturally Xiancheng, the 13 ultimate divine monk. Behind him were Abbot Xianci and a few other eminent monks with the Xian cohort, as well as a young monk with thick eyebrows and big eyes, who was Xuzhu. Upon seeing Xuzhu, Song Qingshu could not help but glance at Li Qinglu, who was next to him. The pair of Mungu and Meng Lang from the original work had met under such circumstances. Although they were still the same people, their feelings were no longer the same. Li Qinglu did not look at Xuzhu at all. After all, she had been in charge of Class 1 Hall for many years, so she rarely paid attention to eminent monks with the Xian cohort, let alone low-ranked disciples like the Su cohort. Xuzhu clearly saw Li Qinglu at this moment, and a hint of surprise flashed through his eyes. His face turned hot, and he quickly lowered his head and muttered the name of Buddha. Song Qingshu saw all of this and could not help but be startled. It has to be said that Xuzhu had seen Wang Yiyin before, and in terms of beauty, both of them had their own advantages. They also looked somewhat similar, but Xuzhu had never shown this kind of expression before. Now that he saw Li Qinglu, he was a little dazed. Could it be that they really had a previous life? But soon, he threw this thought to the back of his mind. After all, the relationship between Li Qinglu and Xuzhu in the original work was too ridiculous. If he wrote it like this, not only would he be criticized by the women's rights warriors, even the readers would not believe it. How could there be such a female protagonist? However, he immediately remembered that his relationship with Li Qinglu was similar to the one in the original work. I'm much more charming than Xuzhu, okay? Besides, I'm Li Qiushui's parents. Chapter 1809. Song Qingshu's face turned cold, and he said lightly, "I spared your life last time. Who gave you the courage to talk nonsense in front of me?" "You." Xiancheng's face instantly turned red. He valued his reputation very much, and he was the best martial artist in the Shaolin Temple. He had always been obsessed with being the world's most powerful martial artist. Now that he had been exposed like this, he was completely disgraced. But he still had a lingering fear when he thought of the fight between the masters of the Shaolin Temple and the fact that they were almost wiped out. His lips trembled for a long time, but he didn't dare to refute. Seeing him acquiesce, the surrounding people were in an uproar. There were many martial artists in the inn, and they knew that Xiancheng was the best in Shaolin Temple in 200 years. But he was almost killed by a young man. Who on earth was this young man? Even Ku Rong and Reverend Yiding couldn't help but be surprised. Although they knew that Song Qingshu was good at martial arts, they had only fought with him a few years ago, and they had only heard rumors about him in Jianghu. They didn't expect that his cultivation had reached such a high level. Jiumaji's eyes were also wide open. He had also fought with Xiancheng, and he knew how amazing Xiancheng's martial arts were. If he hadn't cheated, he would never have been defeated by Xiancheng. He didn't expect that such a person would almost be killed by Song Qing-shu. By the way, I'm curious. I remember that I broke your Vajra body last time, and your meridians were all broken. Why are you still standing here now? Song Qing-shu couldn't help but ask. What? Broke my Vajra body? Even Heavenly Mountain Tong Lao and Li Qiushui, who were very senior, were shocked. Vajra body was known as one of the three divine kung fu of Shaolin Temple since ancient times. Once mastered, one's body would be invulnerable, and no human could break it. Now it seemed that Xian Cheng had broken his body, and his meridians were all broken. Li Qiushui was a little suspicious. Xian Cheng was still standing here, and it didn't look like his meridians were injured. Only Heavenly Mountain Tong Lao nodded secretly. She had once fought with Song Qing-shu, and she knew how terrifying his real cultivation was. Amipa, Xian Ci chanted and added, I have to thank Reverend Eating for saving Xian Cheng with his yang finger at all costs. Last time, when the Shaolin Temple's powerhouses went after Xiao Feng and his son, Song Qing-shu appeared out of nowhere and almost wiped them out single-handedly. The scene was still like a nightmare to him. When he first came here and saw Xian Cheng provoking that devil for a moment of pleasure, he almost cursed his martial arts maniac junior brother to death. He was worried that Song Qing-shu would attack him again, so he quickly tied Reverend Yidong to the Shaolin Temple. With the South Emperor, one of the 5 unmatched masters, Master Kurong from the Sky Dragon Temple, and Duan Yu, who knew the 6 Pulses magic sword, he was slightly at ease. Reverend Yidong didn't know what he was thinking. He answered, Thank you, holy monk, for your unparalleled cultivation. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to save Master Xuanqing. Unfortunately, Xian Cheng was only saved temporarily. He could not reveal the details unless they were in front of their enemies. At the same time, Reverend Yidong was shocked. Back when people from the Shaolin Temple came to him and asked him to save Xian Cheng with the yang finger, Reverend Yidong held a grudge for not saving imperial concubine Lu's illegitimate son, so he had become merciful. Moreover, the Shaolin Temple and the Duan family of Dali had always been on good terms, and they offered a generous bargaining chip this time, so Reverend Yidong could not just stand by and watch. When Reverend Yidong arrived at the Shaolin Temple, he found out that Xian Cheng's meridians were all broken, which was evident that he was injured by someone's tyrannical inner energy. Reverend Yidong had met Xian Cheng once in the past, so he knew how great the latter's martial arts were, but he did not expect someone to injure him to this extent. Out of curiosity, Reverend Yidong asked the Shaolin Temple, but the Shaolin Temple kept it a secret and was unwilling to answer him. Reverend Yidong did not want to force the Shaolin Temple, so he only found out today that it was the young man in front of him who injured Xian Cheng. How did he manage to save him? Song Qing-shu frowned, wondering why Reverend Yidong seemed to be fine. When Huang Rong was injured by Qiu Qianren's iron palm, Wu Jing took her to Reverend Yidong for treatment. After that, he used the general principles of the 9-Yin manual to help Reverend Yidong recover his inner energy. In addition, the Shaolin Temple needed all kinds of elixirs and medicines, and they also had the powerful sweeping monk with them. It should not be a problem for Reverend Yidong to recover his inner energy. The Sun Finger is indeed amazing. Li Qiushui and Tianshan Tong Lao were delighted. They had insisted on bringing Song Qing-shu with them because they wanted him to save the paralyzed Wu Yazi. Unfortunately, they had only heard about the Sun Finger's ability to heal injuries. Now that they had seen it with their own eyes, they felt relieved. It's not that easy. Song Qing-shu suddenly thought of something and said, His meridians are broken. I'm afraid the Sun Finger alone can't heal him. There should be medicines like the Black Jade Ointment. It seems that the Shaolin Temple has secretly sided with the Mongols. Reverend Yidong couldn't help but look at the people of the Shaolin Temple. They did smear some black ointment on Xian Cheng's body. Did they really collude with the Mongols? Xian Ci's expression changed. She hurriedly said, Don't make wild guesses, Prince Song. Our temple has thousands of years of history, and we are good at elixirs. Of course, we have things like the Black Jade Ointment. Why do we need the Mongols? Reverend Yidong nodded and said, That's right. The Shaolin Temple's elixirs are also unparalleled in the martial arts world, and the Recover Pill has been renowned for hundreds of years. Moreover, the Black Jade Ointment comes from the Shaolin Temple in the Western region, which was founded by a trader of the Shaolin Temple. He had an Indian junior brother who was proficient in medicine and had a certain level of attainment in medicine. Naturally, he had heard of the Black Jade Ointment. Song Qingshu didn't rule out this possibility. However, he remembered that the Shaolin Temple had this kind of elixir that could heal his meridians. When his meridians were broken at the lion-slaying contest, the monk said that there was no medicine for him. Although he knew that he was not worth the effort of the Shaolin Temple, he still felt a little unhappy. Not only has Xian Chung recovered, his complexion is also ruddy. His complexion is even better than before. It really is depressing. Song Qingshu secretly thought that it would be better for Xian Chung to provoke him again. Then, he could justifiably send him to the Western Paradise. The rules of this world were about justifying one's actions. If he killed Xian Chung for no reason at this time, he would become the target of public criticism in Jianghu, and the loss would outweigh the gain. This was the price and concern of fighting for the world. Otherwise, there would be no need to pay so much attention to being a devil who is neither good nor evil. Do it quickly. Song Qingshu looked at Xian Chung with a faint smile and kept cheering for him in his heart. Xian Chung didn't know why, but he felt a little cold on his back. In addition, Xian Ci warned him through secret voice sending, so he didn't say anything more. However, this made the people of the Shaolin Temple a little embarrassed. Because of a shadow of the last fiasco, they really didn't want to be under the same roof with the devil Song Qingshu. God knew if he would kill them again. But if they just left like this in front of the Duan family of Dali and so many people in Jianghu, the reputation of the Shaolin Temple would be ruined. For a moment, they didn't know what to do. Chapter 1810. The purple-clothed girl had an oval face, a pair of slender eyebrows, large eyes, and a small mouth, phoenix eyes and cherry lips. She was beautiful and radiant, and her appearance was very sweet, causing one to be reluctant to look away from her. However, her expression was cold and arrogant, and one could tell with a glance that she was not someone to be trifled with. Song Qingshu frowned slightly. It was her. The other person had a dagger at her waist. Her long hair hung down to her shoulders. She wore a light yellow robe and a small hat embroidered with golden threads. There was a long emerald feather on the edge of the hat. She had a graceful figure, as delicate as a spring flower and as beautiful as the morning clouds. Her eyes were bright like the stars and the moon, causing her beauty to exude a heroic spirit. What a valiant and formidable-looking lady. Song Qingshu secretly praised her. Nowadays, he did not simply look at a woman's appearance and figure when he appreciated a woman. More importantly, he looked at her temperament. With so many beautiful women by his side, it was difficult for ordinary women to enter his eyes. However, this lady in yellow had a special temperament. She was full of heroic spirit and had a confident temperament that was different from ordinary people. It was hard for people to forget her once they saw her. At this moment, the elegant young man glanced at the situation in the inn, where he saw Song Qingshu. His pupils involuntarily widened. "It's you." Song Qingshu smiled slightly. "I heard that Leader Chun went to the Western region. I didn't expect to meet you again in the Central Plains." This person was the long-lost Red Flower Society leader, Chun Jialoa. Back in Shenyang, the Red Flower Society had suffered an unprecedented defeat. The 14 leaders had either died or gone into seclusion. Chun Jialoa had no choice but to move west with a few defeated members to the Western region. He did not expect them to return to the Central Plains again. "It's all thanks to you." Chun Jialoa's eyes were filled with hatred as he glared at Song Qingshu. Tianshan Tonglao, who was at the side, said gloatingly, "Little Song, I didn't expect you to have so many enemies. A small inn has attracted so many of them." Song Qingshu calmly took a sip of tea. "They are all defeated by me." At the same time, he felt strange. Although inns and novels and games were places where all kinds of plots were triggered, It was too abnormal for so many big shots of martial arts to appear in an inn in a remote town. He wondered why they were here. Li Qiushui's eyes lit up. Young master, you are heroic. Qinglu has indeed found a good husband. Wang Yuyin turned to look at her cousin, only to see that her cousin's face was filled with adoration and love as she stared at her lover. Wang Yuyin's entire face was glowing, and it was as if her entire body was about to burst into laughter. Wang Yuyin had never seen her cousin so happy before. Thinking about her own situation, she couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Chun Jialuo's handsome face instantly flushed red. He wanted to rush over, but he thought that his martial arts were not a match for the other party. Furthermore, his master and the two ladies were with him, so he could not bring them into danger. A trace of surprise flashed in the yellow-robed woman's eyes, and she quietly asked her friend beside her, "Who is this person?" The lady in purple pursed her lips. In the end, she still introduced Song Qingshu's life to her. Although her voice was soft, everyone present was a highly skilled martial artist. Of course, they could hear her clearly. Tianshan Tonglao smiled faintly and said, "Little Song, did you abandon her after you slept with her? Why do I hear a strong sense of resentment in her voice?" Song Qingshu was speechless. Just because I fooled her once on Mount Amei, I didn't expect her to hold a grudge now. The purple-clothed girl was Yuan Zi. She had tricked her once in Mount Amei and met her again in the Golden Snake meeting. She had always had a bad impression of her. Of course, she didn't like Yuan Zi, who was a green tea character in the original work. Li Qiushui chuckled. Women are the most vengeful creatures in the world. Young master, you'd better not offend women in the future. Heavenly Mountain Tonglao was not used to being on the same side as Li Qiushui. She snorted and changed the topic. The slovenly old man beside them seems to be good at kung fu. Song Qingshu nodded. He is Yuan Shishao, the strange swordsman of Tianqi. He is known as the #1 expert in Huijiang. The two of them had met once at the Golden Snake meet. Speaking of which, he was Qing's master. Of course, he was very clear that this master was most likely only in name. Qing had lost to Yuan Shishao with one hand, and Yuan Shishao couldn't even beat her. Heavenly Mountain Tonglao snorted. How arrogant! Her vulture palace was also located in Tianshan. It was close to Huijiang. Yuan Shishao was known as the #1 expert in Huijiang. How would he treat her? Song Qingshu's expression turned serious. I know you have a habit of killing experts, but you can't kill Yuan Shishao. Heavenly Mountain Tonglao was confused. Is his kung fu very good? She had heard of the strange swordsman of Tianqi. His kung fu was not bad, but it was just not bad. She did not take him seriously. Song Qingshu answered, although Yuan Shishao's kung fu is first-rate in Jianghu, he is still not your opponent. The main thing is that he has an amazing disciple, the Sword Celestial, Qing. The green-shirt girl who appeared in the Golden Snake meeting, Li Qinglu was in charge of Yiping Hall. She collected a lot of information about the martial arts world in the Central Plains. She reacted immediately. That's right. Back then, I had to resort to trickery to win against her. If it was a real fight, even now, I don't have the confidence to beat her. Song Qingshu was emotional. After the Golden Snake meeting, he had not heard any news about Qing. He did not know if he would have the chance to see her again in this life. I thought the rumor was exaggerated. I didn't expect it to be true. Heavenly Mountain Tonglao had also heard of the legend of the Sword Celestial at the Golden Snake meeting. However, she had scoffed when she heard that he could create a sword gleam that was dozens of feet long. She felt that it was just a rumor spread by people in Jianghu. Now that Song Qingshu confirmed it, her expression changed. Li Qiushui was surprised. I have heard of the strange swordsman of Tianqi. How could he teach such a disciple? If people in Jianghu heard this, they would definitely be shocked. Although the strange swordsman of Tianqi was not as famous as the 5 uniques, he was still a first-rate character. In many people's eyes, he was an existence that they looked up to. They did not expect that he was not worth mentioning in the mouth of these women. At this moment, Chun Jialuo also saw the Shaolin monks. He hurried over to them. Disciple Chun Jialua greets Master Abbot. Although Yuan Shishao was also his master was an eminent monk of southern Shaolin. He had a long history with northern Shaolin. So its leader Chun. Now that they had a buffer, Xian Ci and the others found a place to sit. They pulled Chun Jialua aside and started asking him questions. Chapter 1811. The yellow-clothed woman gracefully arrived at Song Qingshu's table. Her eyes seemed to speak, brimming with curiosity. Is young master the famous prince of Qi, Song Qingshu, young master Song? If it was in his previous life, it was normal for girls to take the initiative to strike up a conversation. However, in this era, it was rare for girls to take the initiative. Song Qingshu smiled. I dare not claim to be famous. However, I am indeed Song Qingshu. How should I address you? The yellow-robed lady pursed her lips and smiled. I have heard that you are an all-knowing man of Jianghu. There is nothing that you do not know. Why not guess my identity? He did not expect that she would know about the all-knowing man of Jianghu that he had fabricated in the past. Song Qingshu was pleased but somewhat distressed. How could he guess without a head or tail? Li Qinglu seemed to sense danger and could not help but snort. There are so many beautiful women in the world. How can Brother Song guess all of them? The yellow-robed lady was not annoyed. Instead, she bowed to her. Thank you for your praise. However, in terms of beauty, I am far inferior to you. Hearing her words, Li Qinglu was too embarrassed to say anything else. Song Qingshu's mind worked quickly. Dressed like this, with such a temperament, and from the western region. Suddenly, he saw the emerald feather on her hat, and an idea flashed in his mind. He smiled and said, I heard that there is a female leader in the Hui tribe named Hu Qingtong. Not only is she delicate and beautiful, she is also a female general who commands troops like a god. In the Battle of Heishui River, she defeated the invincible Mongols, who were outnumbered. The Mongols did not dare to step into the Hui border for many years. She is indeed a talented and beautiful woman. Coming from the Hui tribe, wearing a yellow robe and wearing an emerald feather. Wasn't she Hu Qingtong? The girl's face turned slightly red. Young Master Song is overpraising me. Compared to young Master who defeated 100,000 Qing troops and became the overlord of the East in just a few years, I'm still far behind. At this time, her heart could be described as overturning the rivers and seas. The two of them did not know each other before. She just casually asked him to guess her identity. She did not expect him to call out her identity. Could it be that he was really like the rumors of Jianghu? However, she was also a leader, so she quickly denied this kind of speculation. It could only be that the other party had established a powerful and meticulous information network, which is why he could so easily guess her origin and name. At this time, Song Qingshu's gaze landed on the emerald green feather on the side of her hat. He did not know what kind of bird's feather it was, but its entire body was dark green, and it could be said that it was so green that it was shining. Thinking about how her lover Chun Jialua saw her sister in the original work, he threw himself at her sister and was cheated on by his own sister. It was truly a tragedy in the world. Should he tell her the meaning of a green hat? Changing her clothes in the future might not necessarily change her fate, but at least it would be auspicious. Just as Song Qingshu was letting his imagination run wild, Hu Qingtong spoke again. Ladies, I wonder if I can sit here? Wang Yiyan was originally a weak and kind person. Hearing her question, she answered subconsciously, of course. Li Qinglu had just been praised by her, so she naturally could not put down her pride to refuse. As for Li Qiushui and Tianshan Tonglao, they were originally at the level of seniors, so they naturally would not lower themselves to the level of a junior. Song Qingshu looked at the Shaolin monks in the distant corner. Chen Jiao, Yuan Shishao, and Yuan Zi were also sitting there, and the atmosphere was quite harmonious. He could not help but ask, Miss Hua, why don't you sit with your companions? Hu Qingtong did not answer directly, but instead asked another question. Just now, you mentioned that I beat the Mongolians to the point that they dare not enter the country for a few years, but in fact, you are flattering me. You should know that the Mongolians are sweeping across the world, and the Hui tribe alone cannot resist them. These years, if it were not for the help of the Ming dynasty and the countries in the western region, we have long been destroyed by the Mongolians. But now, the Mongolians have mobilized the elites of the Central Plains to attack the West with all their strength, and we cannot hold on for long. So, Song Qingshu seemed to have understood something and roughly guessed the purpose of her trip. Hua Qingtong sighed faintly. So, I came to the Central Plains to contact all the forces in the Central Plains and unite to resist the Mongolians. My companions went to the Shaolin Temple because they are old friends with the Shaolin Temple, but I know that the Shaolin Temple is only a martial arts sect, and it is of no help to our great cause of resisting the Mongolians. Moreover, there are rumors that the Shaolin Temple has secretly accepted the Mongolian title, so it is meaningless for me to go there. With a faint smile, Song Qingshu said, Miss, obviously you have found the wrong person. Our Golden Snake Camp has also negotiated peace with the Mongolians, okay? Hua Qingtong looked at him deeply. According to the analysis of the information I received, you are a man with a broad mind and will never be satisfied with a corner of the world. The peace negotiation with the Mongolians is also an expedient measure, and in the future, you will definitely break up with the Mongolians. Miss, you flatter me. I'm just a playboy, and I travel everywhere. I am satisfied with having a few female confidants by my side. As Song Qingshu spoke, he reached out and pulled Li Qinglu into his arms. Originally, in order to maintain his image, he subconsciously hugged Wang Yuyan, who was beside him, to better fit the image of a playboy with women on his left and right. However, he only realized that it was inappropriate when he stretched out his hand halfway. Putting aside the fact that he was not that close with Wang Yuyan, her sister and grandmother were beside her, and it would be a mess. Therefore, he retracted his hand without a trace. However, all of this was seen by Li Qiushui, who had a thoughtful expression on her face. Song Qingshu had deliberately said that, mainly because he was following the guiding ideology of Gao Zhuchen, which was to accumulate grain and slowly become a king. According to the saying on the internet in the future, it was to develop in a wretched manner and not to act recklessly. Now is not the time to break off relations with the Mongols. He needed time to integrate the resources of the various countries in the Central Plains. Only then would he have the capital to fight the Mongols and fight for the world. Hua Qingtong sighed and said, Young master, why do you have to sully yourself? However, I also understand young master's concerns. There are too many people here, and it is indeed not a good place to talk. I will visit young master in the evening, and we will talk in detail then. With that, he bowed and stood up to walk to where his companions were. Li Qinglu was a little unhappy. What kind of person is this? A girl taking the initiative to go to a strange man's room in the middle of the night. As she spoke, her face suddenly turned red. It turned out that she and Song Qingshu were strangers in the past, and in the end, she ran into his bed naked the moment she arrived. It seemed like she was in no position to criticize others like that. Song Qingshu shook his head and said, Miss Hua is concerned about the safety of the entire tribe. Her heart is filled with love, not love. Tianshan Tonglao nodded and said, That's right. The Spirit Vulture Palace is also on Tianshan. I have heard many rumors about this young lady. She is really a heroine. However, Song Qingshu, I advise you not to have any designs on her, just because she is pretty. She is already taken. The flower is taken? Song Qingshu glanced at the elegant Chun Jialong. Division Master Chun is indeed handsome and confident. Chapter 1812. Zhang Wuji. Hearing this name, Song Qingshu's heart was no longer disturbed. However, he was a little surprised to know that Ming cult and Hua Qingtong were engaged. However, he quickly felt relieved. The Ming cult and the Hui tribe lived next to each other and faced the pressure from the Mongols together. It could be said that the lips were interdependent and the teeth were interdependent. It was inevitable for the two parties to unite. In order to deepen their relationship, a marriage was the simplest and most effective method. As the daughter of the tribe leader, Hua Qingtong was born beautiful and naturally became the main character of the marriage. I wonder if Princess Xiangxiangbela will also be a candidate for marriage. Song Qing-shu thought of the devastatingly beautiful woman in the original novel. He wondered if her appearance in this world was as exaggerated as hers. But now, Zhang Wuji should have become Zhang Wuji. He thought back to the time when he was on the Blackwood Cliff. He had done something to the star-absorbing technique that the venerable Ming had secretly learned. The yin and yang qi in his body would unknowingly become chaotic, and he would completely lose some of his functions. He did not expect him to be so thick-skinned as to marry someone else. Song Qing-shu could not help but despise him. However, it was also possible that their marriage had been finalized a long time ago. Looking at the beautiful Huo Qingtong in the distance, Song Qing-shu could not help but feel pity. In the original novel, her fate was not good. He did not expect that this world would be even worse. Not only did she have to shoulder responsibilities that did not belong to her age, but she also had to marry a stranger for the benefit of her tribe. Not only that, she was destined to be a widow for the rest of her life. That was tragic enough. Do you have a special hobby? Why do you stare at other people's fiancés? Heaven Mountain Tonglao noticed that his eyes kept glancing at Huo Qingtong. Recently, he even had a strange smile on his face. She could not help but ask. Song Qingshu's smile froze. At this time, Li Qinglu and Wang Yuyin looked at him. When he saw Wang Yuyin's pure and confused eyes, he could not help but be angry. What nonsense are you talking about? I was just thinking about the alliance between the Hui tribe and the Ming dynasty. Is that so? Looking at Heaven Mountain Tonglao's expression, it was obvious that she did not believe a word he said. Song Qingshu was furious. A captive should have the self-awareness of being a captive. If you dare to talk back, do you believe that I will sell you to Yihong brothel? You, Tianshan Tonglao, was furious. What, you want to fight? Song Qingshu smiled disdainfully. First, you can't beat me. Second, don't you want the antidote? Only then did Heaven Mountain Tonglao remember that she was also poisoned by his 3 corpses brain pill. She was so angry that she gritted her teeth, but she could only sit down again and turn her head away to sulk. Jiumaji, who was standing on the side, clicked his tongue. He knew very well how powerful Heavenly Mountain Tonglao's martial arts were. How could such a demon, who stood at the top of the Jianghu, be Song Qingshu's captive? Even Wang Yuyin could not help but glance at him. After all, they had traveled together for so long. Yet she did not know that there was such a relationship between them. Spirit Vulture Palace had always been Class 1 Hall's #1 enemy. When Li Qinglu saw Heavenly Mountain Tonglao, whom she viewed as a great threat, being humiliated in front of her lover, her gaze when she looked at Song Qingshu became even more adoring. As for Li Qiushui, when she saw how flustered and embarrassed her old enemy was, she was naturally overjoyed. If it were not because she was worried that he would vent his anger on her, she would have already started to hit him when he was down. The group finished their meal just like that, each with their own thoughts in mind. The people from Shaolin Temple and the Dali Duan family walked together, along with Chun Jialuo, Yuan Shixiao, and the others. It was clear that they were huddling together to guard against the demon in their hearts. When these people gathered together, they were enough to shake the Jianghu. It would not be easy for Song Qingshu to deal with them. Moreover, he had important matters to attend to on this trip, so he did not want to complicate matters. After the meal, Song Qingshu and his group went to some rooms in the backyard of the inn to rest. The monks from Shaolin Temple had originally planned to stay there, but with Song Qingshu around, they felt uneasy, so they got up and left to look for another place. Ku Rong and Reverend Eating had been discussing the Dharma with them, and since they were on the same side, they could only move with them. Duan Yu was actually very reluctant to leave the goddess, but he could not dissuade Ku Rong and the other elders, so he could only leave while looking back. As for Chun Jialuo and the others, they were completely confused. He had wanted to use Shaolin Temple's strength to take Song Qingshu down, but he did not expect that the people from Shaolin Temple would actually avoid him. It was no wonder that he did not know. After all, no one else had been present when the elites from Shaolin Temple had been defeated by Song Qingshu, so it was only natural that Shaolin Temple kept it a secret. However, Having to stay behind and face Song Qingshu alone was a little troublesome, so he decided to leave with the people from Shaolin Temple. Hui Qingtong did not want to leave, but after all, she was traveling with Chun Jelua and Yuan Shao, so she could only leave with a heavy heart. Seeing everyone's reaction, Song Qingshu could not help but laugh and say, "Look at Duanyu, that kid, looking back 3 times with every step, looking at this one and that one. I wonder if he is reluctant to leave Miss Wang, the goddess, or the princess." These words made the women pout coquettishly. Compared to the shy young girl, Li Qiushui was much calmer. I think that Miss Wu also looks back every 3 steps. I don't know if Gongzi is a little disappointed that she couldn't fulfill her promise to meet you tonight. Song Qingshu was speechless. Old Ginger was indeed spicier, so he wisely did not dwell on this topic. At night, Song Qingshu and Li Qinglu shared a room, while Wang Yuyin and Li Qiushui shared a room. The grandmother and granddaughter had not seen each other for so many years, so they still had some intimate things to say. On the other side was Tianshan Tonglao, and Jiumaji's room was the furthest away. After closing the door, Li Qinglu was hugged by Song Qingshu, so she naturally knew what he was going to do. She blushed and said softly, "Be quiet later, there are people next door." It was no wonder that she was embarrassed. On one side was her grandmother and younger sister, and on the other side was a sharp-tongued enemy. Although Jiumaji was far away, he was skilled and had sharp eyes and ears. No strange sounds could escape his eyes and ears. Song Qingshu hugged the young girl in his arms and smelled the faint fragrance of a young girl. He moved closer to her ear and said, "I should be saying this to you. I won't make a sound anyway." "You're so annoying." Li Qinglu's face became even redder. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Song Qingshu impatiently poked his head out from under the blanket and asked, "Who is it?" "Prince Song, it's me." Hui Qingtong's clear voice came from outside the door. "I made an appointment with young master this morning. There are some things I want to discuss with young master in detail." Chapter 1813. Hui Qingtong did not expect to be given the cold shoulder at the door. In her opinion, even if Song Qingshu did not agree to the alliance, he would still have to put up a front. Who knew that he would directly close the door? If she had no other restraints, she would have turned around and left in such a situation. However, she had the fate and future of her people on her shoulders. This trip to the Central Plains was to unite with some potential allies. It was not a big deal, even if she suffered a little. Thinking of this, Hui Qingtong calmed down a lot. After all, she was a leader and could distinguish the stakes. She was not comparable to those spoiled young ladies. Since the other party asked her to wait, she would stand outside the door and wait. Maybe he would feel apologetic when he came out later. Then, she would be able to take the initiative in the negotiation. However, her face suddenly turned red because she heard a faint sound coming from the room. Although the sound was deliberately suppressed, she was standing at the door and was a martial arts practitioner. How could she not hear it? Although Hui Qingtong was a virgin who had yet to experience the world, she was the leader of a region. Of course, she was not like those young ladies who did not leave the house and knew nothing about these things. She understood what the sound was after hearing it for a while. This time, she was embarrassed. As a young lady, she was too embarrassed to continue staying here. However, if she left immediately, it would seem that she was not sincere enough. While she was embarrassed, Li Qinglu in the room was even more embarrassed. Her pretty face was already extremely red. "Someone is looking for you outside?" Song Qingshu answered directly. "Ignore her." Li Qinglu's face was so red that water was about to drip out. "What if she has something important to say?" Song Qingshu smiled and said, "No matter how important it is, could it be more important than our matter?" Li Qinglu was so embarrassed that she directly turned under the blanket. "How am I going to face others later? It is human nature to have sex. What is there to be ashamed about?" Song Qingshu moved closer to her ear and said, "Cooperate with us and finish quickly. I can go out and chase her away later." Li Qinglu moaned, and her whole body went limp after some time. When Song Qingshu came out of the house, he found Hui Qingtong standing in the courtyard, seemingly admiring the moonlight. Miss was in a good mood. Hua Qingtong turned around. Under the moonlight, her fair skin was tinged with a faint blush. When it comes to elegance, how can I compare to Prince Song? There was a hint of sarcasm in her voice. After all, no matter who it was, they would not be in a good mood after being left outside for so long, let alone a girl like her who had been forced to listen to so many things that would make her blush. You and I are both in a good mood tonight. It seems that we are bosom friends. Song Qing-shu was thick-skinned enough and said in a deadpan manner, "Who has that kind of interest with you?" Hua Qingtong muttered in a low voice. She really wanted to scold him, but in the end, her rationality prevailed, and she dispelled this tempting thought. "Since we are bosom friends, what do you think of my suggestion during the day?" "What suggestion?" Song Qing-shu pretended not to know. Hua Qingtong's breathing instantly became rapid. She had been waiting outside for so long and had long been suppressing a bellyful of anger. She could not help but raise her voice. "Prince Song, I originally left with Leader Chun and the others, but I still sneaked back to discuss it with you. Even if you deliberately left me outside, I still waited patiently. In the end, you're saying this now. Isn't it too ungentlemanly?" Song Qing-shu smiled slightly. "I'm not a gentleman to begin with." Hua Qingtong bit her lip and turned to leave. Seeing that the time was right, Song Qing-shu said, "Miss Hua, you came to find me in the middle of the night. Zhang Jiaozhu may not like it." Hua Qingtong stopped when she heard him asking her to stay. "He is him, and I am me. Not to mention that we're not married yet. Even if we were married, he wouldn't be able to control what I want to do." Song Qing-shu's eyebrows twitched. He thought to himself that it was no wonder she could command thousands of troops. Her personality was independent and strong enough. If you look for someone else, he may not care. But if you look for me, he may not be able to stand it. Hua Qingtong was stunned for a moment before she realized it. Zhou Zhiruo and Zhang Wuji from the Amei sect had almost married, but now they had become Lady Song. It was rumored that the relationship between Mongolia's Zhao Min and Song Qing-shu was unclear. The hatred of killing his father and stealing his wife, it seemed that the relationship between the two of them was not good. I have also heard about the grudge between the two of you. However, when it comes to military affairs, Zhang Jiaozhu is not the kind of person who will abandon official duties for personal reasons. Oh, it seems that you have a good impression of Zhang Wuji, Song Qing-shu said with a smile. Of course, he is well-versed in both the pen and the sword, and he is my future husband. How can I not have a good impression of him? Hua Qingtong still had some resentment in her heart. She could not help but add, "At least my impression of him is much better than that of Prince Song." Song Qing-shu did not feel offended at all. Of course, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Hua Qingtong was not willing to talk about this with him anymore. She directly returned to the topic at hand. Prince Song is a smart man. He should know that once the Mongolians complete their westward expedition, they will have to deal with the countries in the Central Plains. At that time, it will be difficult for you to stay out of it. You should understand the principle that the lips are cold and the teeth are cold. Song Qing-shu smiled. Miss Hua should have heard about the matter between me and the Mongolian princess. With this layer of relationship, even if the Mongolians conquer the world, I can still be the son-in-law. What's wrong with that? Hua Qingtong looked at him deeply. Young master, why do you have to pretend to be unambitious? Although you are negotiating peace with the Mongolians now, Zhang Jiaozhu has already told me everything, including the matter of you forming an alliance to deal with the Mongolians. Hearing this, Song Qing-shu finally put away his frivolous smile. Back then on the Blackwood Cliff, Song Qing-shu actually had the chance to spare the life of Zhang Wuji or venerated Ming. However, considering that he still needed him to lead the Ming dynasty to delay the Mongolians, he let him live. I quite admire Zhang Jiaozhu for being able to let go of his personal grudges and still form an alliance with you, young master. Hua Qingtong's eyes shone brightly as she spoke. Song Qing-shu looked at her. It seems that Miss Hua is quite fond of this fiancé of yours. Hua Qingtong blushed. Young master, you don't have to worry about our relationship. This time, I came here hoping to get your help to persuade the countries in the Central Plains to work together to fight against the Mongolians. This way, everyone will have a way out. Song Qingshu sneered. The countries in the Central Plains have been fighting each other for years. You want to work together? Miswa, why would you say such childish words? Chapter 1814. Song Qingshu nodded. Although it's a bit stupid, people with ideals are often admirable. Hu Qingtong felt a little embarrassed after being praised by him. Of course, I also understand that it's not realistic to ask all the countries in the Central Plains to join forces to deal with Mongolia. After all, the Southern Song dynasty doesn't have a border with Mongolia now. Liao is stuck between the gaps of the other countries and can only barely protect itself. There's also a small country at the border like Dali. It's too much to ask them to deal with Mongolia. Song Qingshu couldn't help but laugh. No wonder you didn't go to Dali's crown Prince Duan and came to me instead. Hu Qingtong smiled shyly. I came to the Central Plains this time to shoulder the rise and fall of the tribe. Naturally, I cannot waste my energy on some unworthy people. However, Crown Prince Duan is honest and kind. It's not bad to be a friend. Listening to her talk, Song Qingshu sighed with mixed emotions in his mind. This was the gap between them. In the original novel, Murong Fu did not like Duan Yu because of Wang Yuyan. But when he found out Duan Yu's identity as the Crown Prince of Great Li, he even planned to use Wang Yuyan to set up a honey trap and borrow the army from Great Li to recover Great Yan. With Dali's weak combat power, the entire country's top leaders became monks and worshipped Buddha at the slightest provocation. No one knew how Murong Fu's brain worked. Just look at Hu Qingtong. Didn't he see all kinds of interests clearly? At this moment, Hu Qingtong continued. In my opinion, the only ones who have the ability to deal with the Mongols are the Jin Kingdom and the Manchurian Qing dynasty. The Manchurian Qing dynasty's War of the Three Kingdoms is coming to an end, and they will soon be free to deal with it. The Jin Kingdom will also negotiate peace with the Southern Song dynasty. When the two countries join forces, the Mongols will definitely have to withdraw their troops to save themselves. At that time, our Hui tribe, Zhang Jiaozhu's Ming dynasty, and the various countries in the western region will all respond. In addition, the Mongol Khan Temujin is already old. Song Qingshu had to admire her analysis. One had to know that the powerful Mongolian Empire in history had finally collapsed because of an internal power struggle. He did not expect that Hu Qingtong, who was involved in the situation, could actually be so sensitive to this point. She could really be called a female Zhuge. Thinking that she was also an excellent battlefield commander, he could not help but cherish her talent. If he could recruit her, she would be more than enough to be the commander-in-chief of a frontline army in the future. Unfortunately, she was Zhang Wuji's fiancée and was destined to not be in the same camp. Song Qingshu sighed inwardly before he said, "In that case, Miss Hua should be persuading the higher-ups of the Jin Kingdom and Manchuria." "Why are you looking for me?" He stared into the man's eyes as he asked. He was worried that the news that he was controlling the Jin Kingdom and the Qing Kingdom would leak out. Hu Qingtong replied, "If you want the Jin Kingdom and the Qing Kingdom to focus on dealing with the Mongols, then your Golden Snake Camp and the Southern Song dynasty cannot attack them from behind. Otherwise, it will be a situation where the enemies are happy and the friends are hurt." Song Qingshu replied, "I can make the decision for the Golden Snake Camp, but how can I influence the Southern Song dynasty?" Hu Qingtong smiled slightly. "Why are you so modest? You have already been conferred the title of Prince of Qi by the Southern Song dynasty. At the same time, you will marry two Southern Song dynasty princesses. This can be said to be unprecedented. I believe that you naturally have the ability to influence the Southern Song dynasty." Song Qingshu spread out his hands. "Let's not talk about this for now. If I agree to this, what benefits will I get?" "Benefits?" Hu Qingtong was startled. It was obvious that she did not understand. "I don't know how much risk I will have to take to help you deal with the powerful Mongols. Moreover, it is not in the interest of the Golden Snake Camp to sit back and watch as the Jin and Qing Kingdom's rear is empty." Song Qingshu paused. "You can't let me sacrifice my interests for your tribe without any benefits, right? I wonder what benefits you want, young master." Hua Qingtong asked in return. Song Qingshu glanced at her indifferently. Miss Hua, you don't have any sincerity at all? Hua Qingtong smiled bitterly. I'm not deliberately trying to be sly. In fact, before I came here, I'd already thought of many ways to persuade you. However, after thinking about it, you have unparalleled martial arts. You have a strong army under your command, and you are surrounded by beauties. It can be said that you have reached a realm that countless men can't reach in 10 lifetimes. I really don't know what else can move you. No matter how she thought about it, the only thing that could move him was probably the power to conquer the world. If he wanted to conquer the world, the Mongols were his biggest enemy. Naturally, he would stand on their side. Therefore, Hua Qingtong was also gambling on whether Song Qingshu had this ambition or not. Actually, you have something that can move my heart, Song Qingshu said with a faint smile. Hua Qingtong was secretly delighted. She hurriedly said, Young master, please say it. As long as our tribe has it, just say it. We will definitely satisfy you. Now that the Mongols were powerful, although the Hui tribe could still resist for a while, they could not see any hope in the future. What people were most afraid of was having no hope. Previously, they had entrusted Yuanzi to come to the Central Plains, but unfortunately, there was little effect. Hua Qingtong had no choice but to make a trip personally to find the illusory hope for the entire tribe. If she could persuade Song Qingshu, then this plan could be said to be half a success. Naturally, she valued it very much. Song Qingshu shook his head. Miss Hua, don't agree too early. Otherwise, you will regret it later. Hua Qingtong was stunned. Suddenly, she thought of something. No, you are not allowed to have any ideas about my sister, Kasley. Her sister's beauty had spread far and wide in the western region. It was said that even the Mongol Khan was interested in her. Naturally, this was her first reaction. Kasley. Song Qingshu was stunned for a moment before he realized that it was Princess Fragrance's real name. He could not help but smile and said, I haven't even seen your sister. Why would I pay such a big price for a strange woman? It was said that Princess Xiangxiang was extremely beautiful. However, no matter how beautiful she was still a woman. How could she compare to a country and a city? What's more, it wasn't as if he didn't have beautiful women by his side. Then it's not a problem. It's fine as long as it's not my sister. Hua Qingtong heaved a sigh of relief. She thought that apart from her sister, there was nothing else in the entire tribe that she could not pay. All right then, I can agree to your conditions, but Miss Hua has to be mine, Song Qingshu said slowly. Shameless. Hua Qingtong's face instantly turned red. She suddenly stood up and left without looking back. Only Song Qingshu was left with a stunned expression. He thought to himself, I only value your intelligence, and your ability to determine the outcome of a battle from 1,000 miles away. It's not like I want your body. Why are these girls' thoughts so dirty nowadays? Hua Qingtong was still a little angry, even after she was far away from the inn. She could not help but kick a tree beside her a few times. Despicable, shameless. Actually, it was not that she did not think of this possibility. However, she had already set up an engagement with the Ming cult's cult leader, and the man with the surname Song also knew about it. Presumably, he would not have any ideas about her. However, she did not expect that she had really underestimated his lower limit. Could it be that the hatred between him and Zhang Wuji had really reached such a level? Did he want to snatch every woman around Zhang Jiaozhu? The thought flashed through her mind. Hua Qingtong's face was a little red. Compared to Zhang Jiaozhu, who had abandoned his personal grudges for the sake of the great cause, Song's vision was too low. It seemed that she had misjudged him previously. Chapter 1815. Hua Qingtong immediately turned around and stared warily at the forest. Who's there? Lady, don't be afraid. I'm not a bad person. Soon, a young man who looked like a rich man walked out. He waved a fan in his hand and had the charm of a Jiangnan scholar. However, he had a braid on his head and was dressed like a man from the plains. It was really out of place. Mongolian? Hua Qingtong saw his attire and couldn't help but shudder. Huh? Hearing Hua Qingtong's words, the rich man couldn't help but exclaim. So it's Lady Hua who just returned to the border. I didn't expect to meet you here. Who are you? Hua Qingtong's alarm grew, and she instinctively took 2 steps back. At the same time, she gripped the hilt of her sword tightly, ready to attack at any time. Little Prince Huado greets Lady. So this rich man was the idle Prince Huado of Mongolia. He was previously sent to the Central Plains as a spy. She didn't know why he was here. Huado. Hua Qingtong frowned. I don't remember. Huado put away his fan and smiled. I'm just a nobody in Mongolia. It's normal that you don't remember me. However, I saw you once from afar on the battlefield a few years ago. At that time, you were valiant like a god of war. You left a deep impression on me. He paused and scanned Hua Qingtong's body. I didn't expect you to have such a graceful figure after taking off your armor and changing into women's clothing. You are as delicate as a spring flower and as beautiful as the morning clouds. In the past, I only saw you from afar. Now that I'm in front of you, I didn't expect there to be such a good woman in the world. I can't help but feel my heart beat faster. Tui, impulsive person. Hua Qingtong spat on the ground. After what had just happened to Song Qingshu, she was especially sensitive to such things. Huado was at a loss for words. He had tried his best to express his admiration for her, and in addition to the fact that he was quite handsome, this little girl should have a very good impression of him. Why was she so blunt and full of disgust? Huado could be considered an experienced playboy, but unfortunately, he was just a low-level pervert. In the end, he didn't understand that if a woman liked you, no matter how clumsy you were, she would still think that you were honest and cute. If a woman didn't like you, no matter how you acted, you would only get a frivolous and slippery evaluation. Hua Qingtong didn't want to waste her breath on him anymore. She turned around and was about to leave, but Huado couldn't bear to let her leave. With a leap, he blocked her way and said, "Miss, please wait." A cold light flashed, and the sword in Hua Qingtong's hand had already pierced out. She had been through countless battles on the battlefield and knew the importance of seizing the initiative. The other party's motive was self-evident. She would not foolishly ask the other party what he wanted to do like those rich ladies. Huado clearly didn't expect her to attack just like that, so he couldn't help but be flustered. Hua Qingtong's swordsmanship was the Tian Shan's sex tripartite swordsmanship. Every move was only 1/3 of the way. Just as the enemy was about to parry, the swordsmanship would change. One move would contain 3 moves, and it was the most complicated and ruthless. This swordsmanship didn't have a defensive stance, but was all about attacking and killing. Huado had already lost the initiative. Under such a fierce swordsmanship, he was surrounded by danger. Very quickly, a few more wounds appeared on his body. If it wasn't for the fact that he was much older and had more profound skills, he would have already died on the spot. Being forced into such a pathetic state, he was naturally extremely furious. Suddenly, he saw an opportunity and shouted loudly. He opened the folding fan in his hand, and at the same time, he raised his left sleeve, stirring up a gust of wind, and hurriedly pounced towards his opponent. The gust of wind was swift and fierce, and it was the violent gale rapid thunder technique. The tripartite swordsmanship that Hua Qingtong used was already ready to change at any time. Even though the other party's martial arts were strange, she wasn't afraid. She planned to avoid the sharp edge and continue attacking. Who knew that the gust of wind would suddenly stir up a white powder? She only smelled a sweet fragrance, and her heart couldn't help but sink. She hurriedly retreated and glared angrily at the other party with a red face. Despicable. Huado closed his folding fan and had a smug expression on his face. All is fair in war. Mrs. led troops in a battle for so many years. Don't tell me you don't even know this? Hua Qingtong bit her lip, her face darkening, and she didn't say anything. Even though she had retreated at the first instance, she had still inhaled quite a bit of the powder. The medicine in the hands of this perverted thief couldn't be anything good. As expected, the moment she circulated her energy, she felt a sense of dizziness. She couldn't help but turn pale with fright. What medicine is this? A medicine that can make a woman happy. A strange expression flashed across Huado's face. As he spoke, he walked towards her. "Miss Hua, You don't have to stall for time. You won't be able to force this medicine out. Hua Qingtong knew that her plan to stall for time had failed. She hurriedly turned and ran. Unfortunately, she was poisoned. How could she outrun the other party? Huido easily caught up to her. As he watched her stumble, he couldn't help but laugh. "Miss, so you want to play a game of chasing after me? Then I, little Wang, will keep you company." Shameless. Hua Qingtong cursed angrily. Perhaps it was because she was anxious she accidentally tripped over a rock and fell to the ground. Sigh, Huido felt pity for her. If such a lovely little girl fell and ended up with a scar on her face, it would be too much of a killjoy. Even if she wasn't injured, it wouldn't be pretty if she was covered in mud. Thus, he rushed over and reached out to grab her waist, wanting to pull her into his arms. At this moment, Hua Qingtong's originally confused eyes suddenly flashed with a cold light. She twisted her waist and turned around with exaggerated flexibility. The sword in her hand suddenly stabbed towards his chest. This time, she didn't use the tripart sword technique because she didn't need to hold back. If she didn't succeed, she would die trying. Huido's heart skipped a beat. Only then did he realize that she had been pretending earlier on. However, it was too late now. He rushed over hurriedly. At this moment, the old force had already worn off, and he couldn't avoid it even if he wanted to. At this critical moment, he could only use his fan to block in front of him. Sparks appeared in the darkness. It turned out that the ribs of his fan were made of diamond. When the tip of the sword stabbed into the ribs, it created a series of sparks because of the great force. At this moment, Huido's face was gloomy as he looked at the bleeding wound on his chest. "Bitch, you actually made me bleed. I'll make you bleed well later." It turned out that although his fine steel fan had blocked the tip of the sword, there was still a gap between the ribs of the fan. In the end, it didn't completely block the sword and caused his chest to be stabbed. Hua Qingtong heard the lust in his words and naturally understood what it meant to make her bleed. An abnormal bright red flashed across her face. She wasn't sure if it was because of anger or something else. She secretly sighed. Just now, she had deliberately pretended to escape in a panic to create an opportunity for herself to kill him in one blow. She had successfully tricked him into coming over. Unfortunately, she failed at the last moment. Chapter 1816. I've heard that the yellow robe of the Hui Jiang is resourceful. Now that I've seen it, you really live up to your reputation. I almost died in your hands a few times. Huido stopped the bleeding from a wound. He could not hide the admiration in his voice. One must know that he was a person who was good at scheming and scheming. When he competed with people who were more skilled in martial arts than him, he often used his wits to win. In the end, when he faced Hua Qingtong today, he almost lost his life several times in a row. Hua Qingtong knew what kind of humiliation she would suffer if she fell into his hands. Originally, she wanted to endure the humiliation for the safety of her tribe, but she quickly thought that if she lost her virginity to this person, even if she escaped, the Ming dynasty would definitely cancel the marriage after they found out. The two sides might even turn against each other. Without the help of the Ming dynasty, the Hui tribe would not be able to survive alone. In the end, they would only die. Since that was the case, why should she suffer this person's humiliation? Her thoughts were like lightning. Hua Qingtong had already analyzed all the possibilities clearly. She had always been proud and arrogant. She really didn't want to face the humiliation that was about to come. She slashed her sword across her neck. Unfortunately, Huido was already prepared for this. He was already familiar with this kind of bullying. How could he let cooked duck fly away? He threw the iron fan in his hand and knocked the sword out of the other party's hand. "Miss, why do you have to do this? There are so many wonderful things in the world. Why do you have to commit suicide?" If someone who didn't know what was going on saw this, they would only think that he was a benevolent man who was trying to persuade a young girl to commit suicide. With you shameless perverts around, the world is not a beautiful place. For some reason, Hua Qingtong thought of Song Qingshu and hated him. If that bastard hadn't made her wait for half the night and made such a shameless request, she wouldn't have coincidentally met Huido here and fallen into this state. Who said that? I will soon let you experience the joy of being a woman. The wound on his chest aroused Hua Dou's bestial nature. He smiled sinisterly as he walked towards Hua Qingtong. Hua Qingtong felt a little hopeless as she watched the other party approach step by step. She had already thought of all kinds of methods, but they had all failed. Although she was resourceful, there were only the two of them in the wilderness now. There was nothing she could use. She could not cook without rice. A few years ago, I saw Miss riding on a tall horse and commanding thousands of troops. How valiant and heroic. I didn't think that I would be able to ride on a horse like the jadeite yellow robe today. This is truly the greatest joy in the world. Hua Dou's eyes were almost glowing with a green light. This horse belongs to Zhang De of the Ming dynasty. You overestimate yourself and want to ride it. Are you tired of living? At this time, a mocking voice came from above. Who? Hua Dou was shocked. He had specially looked around, and this was the wilderness. There was no one within 1,000 feet. How could there be a human voice above his head in the blink of an eye? Hua Qingtong also looked in the direction of the voice and saw a familiar figure sitting leisurely on a tree branch, sizing up everything below him in a mocking manner. It's you bastard. Hua Qingtong was instantly furious. She had already recognized the other party. Who else could it be other than Song Qingshu? Hey, is this how you treat your savior? Song Qingshu was instantly displeased. Actually, when Hua Qingtong had stormed off, he couldn't be bothered with her. Although he knew that she had misunderstood him, he had no intention of chasing after her to explain. Who knew that the commotion in the courtyard would attract Li Qinglu, Wang Yuyin, and the others. All of them accused him of deliberately using such words to cause misunderstandings. Song Qingshu explained helplessly. He had no intention of forming an alliance with Hua Qingtong at the moment. He had deliberately said such ambiguous words to make her back off. Although Li Qinglu understood, she still urged him to explain. It turned out that she didn't want her lover to be seen as a pervert. Even Wang Yuyin, who was at the side, helped him. Although she didn't say it directly, her eyes and tone were blaming him. His words and actions just now were indeed inappropriate. If this spread to the martial world, it would easily tarnish his reputation. Unable to stop the women from chattering, Song Qingshu had no choice but to run out to find Hua Qingtong to resolve the misunderstanding. Who knew that he would coincidentally run into such a wonderful show? Who needs you to save? Hua Qingtong spoke halfway, and her imposing manner dropped. After all, compared to a beast like Hua Dou, a bastard like Song Qingshu was easier to deal with. At least he would negotiate, unlike Hua Dou, who only wanted to satisfy his beast desires. At this time, Hua Dou also recognized Song Qingshu. He couldn't help but be frightened out of his wits. The two of them had interacted a few times and naturally knew how terrifying the other was. At this time, he couldn't bring himself to resist at all. He hurriedly kowtowed and apologized. So Miss Hua is Prince Song's woman. This lowly one deserves to die for offending her. Please show mercy, young master. Hua Qingtong was stunned. She didn't expect that Hua Dou, who had just been strutting around in front of her, would instantly turn into a kowtowing bug when he saw Song Qingshu. The contrast was too great, and she couldn't recover for a moment. Song Qingshu smiled faintly. You can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. Miss Hua is the fiancée of the Ming dynasty's Zhang Jiaozhu. She's not my woman. Hua Dou secretly curled his lips. He thought to himself, we're both men. How could I not know what you're thinking? What's more, Zhou Zhuo was Zhang Wuji's fiancée. Zhao Min and Zhang Wuji were also recognized as lovers. In the end, didn't they all end up in your room? This Hua Qingtong probably won't be able to escape your clutches in the end. Although he was roasting wildly in his heart, he still spoke respectfully. Zhang Wuji is like a firefly. How can he compete with young master's brilliance? Sooner or later, Miss Hua will recognize Zhang Wuji's true colors. She'll abandon darkness for light and become young master's confidant. His words made Hua Qingtong tremble in anger. What are you saying? Who will be blind to follow him? Hua Dou rolled his eyes and ignored him. He looked respectfully at Song Qingshu on the tree. You're really good with words. Song Qingshu couldn't help but be amused. I'm happy today. You can leave. Thank you, young master. Thank you, young master. Huido nodded. In order to show his respect, he didn't turn around and leave in a hurry. Instead, he thanked him as he retreated. You're letting him go just like that? Hui Qingtong was in disbelief. What else could I do? Song Qingshu shrugged. You're not my woman. He didn't offend me. Why wouldn't I let him go? If you want to settle the score with him, go straight to your Zhang Jiaozhu. You were moved by a few words of flattery. You're indeed jackals of the same tribe. Hui Qingtong's eyes turned red. He was so angry that he was about to cry. Think what you want. The reason why Song Qingshu let Huido go was mainly because he saw the ambition in him. As a descendant of Jamuka, Huido had a blood feud with Temujin. If he kept him in Mongolia, he would one day be of help to Song Qingshu. However, there is no need to explain all of this to Hui Qingtong. At this moment, Hui Qingtong's impression of him was extremely bad. She didn't want to stay with him any longer. She struggled to get up from the ground and staggered away. Song Qingshu smiled. Miss, are you leaving just like that? I don't want to stay with someone like you. Hui Qingtong gritted her teeth. It's fine if you don't want to be with me, but you're drugged. You'll faint in the wilderness soon. If wolves or tigers pass by, the majestic yellow jadeite robe will become food in the stomachs of animals. Song Qingshu's voice continued. Hui Qingtong ignored him. This is the Central Plains. There are towns nearby. How could there be so many wolves or tigers? Chapter 1817. Hui Qingtong stopped in her tracks and said hatefully, Do you think all the men in the world are as shameless as you? Song Qingshu sighed. If all the men in the world were as pure and kind as me, it would be a paradise. Hui Qingtong wanted to just leave and not listen to his slanderous words. However, he thought that the possibility that the other party had mentioned did exist. If he were to faint by the roadside and bump into some unruly person, he would really want to cry, but no tears would come out. Miswa, do you know what's more unbearable than being humiliated by a man in this world? Song Qingshu asked. Hui Qingtong was stunned. What? It's being humiliated by a group of men. It's fine if you meet a man, but if you meet a group of hot-blooded men passing by, TSK, that scene. Song Qingshu described it as if he could not bear to look at it. Disgusting. Hui Qingtong was really creeped out. If she was really a group of men, thinking of this, she really wanted to tear that person's annoying mouth apart. Are you really going to leave? Song Qingshu saw that she was already hesitating, so he continued, Huido shouldn't have gone far. Hui Qingtong's expression changed slightly, and she snorted. If you want to chase me away, I won't leave. Compared to the illusory threats mentioned by the other party, Huido's existence was real. She did not want to be bullied by Huido after such a long time. Song Qingshu jumped down from the tree. In that case, come with me. Where are we going? Hui Qingtong looked wary. Song Qingshu said curiously, Back to the inn, of course. Are you going to sleep in the wilderness for the night? Hui Qingtong's dizziness was getting worse. She bit her lip and said, Can't you help me force the poison out? How is this poison? It's just some knockout drug. Song Qingshu shook his head and said, Since it's not poison, it can't be forced out. I'll be fine after sleep. Sleep? Hui Qingtong subconsciously covered her chest. What are you up to? Seeing her vigilant look, Song Qingshu could not help but roll his eyes. What's with your reaction? You're making me look like I'm hungry. It's not like you haven't seen the girls around me. Which one of them isn't prettier than you? Why would I look for you? Hui Qingtong's face turned red. Although she was very confident in her looks, she recalled the few ladies around him during the day. They were all really beautiful. Even as a woman, she still felt a little dazzled by them. However, she still held a grudge against the words who isn't prettier than you, and couldn't help but snort. I'm different from the others. After all, I'm cult leader Zhang's fiancé. Who knows if you'll have any evil thoughts because of this? Originally, she was just saying it casually, but after saying it like that, she was suddenly shocked. The possibility was indeed very high. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but feel a little regretful. Song Qingshu suddenly stopped and turned back to look at her up and down. Now that you mention it, I suddenly feel that your charm has increased a bit. Zhang Wuji's woman really makes people want to conquer her. Hua Qingtong was so scared that he took a few steps back. You don't mess around. But she knew in her heart that she couldn't even deal with Huado, and Huado didn't even dare to breathe loudly in front of this person. If he really wanted to do something, how could she resist? Song Qingshu smiled and said, "Don't worry. Even if I want Zhang Wuji's woman, I have to make her surrender to me willingly. I won't force her. Bah, I will never willingly submit to you in this lifetime." Hua Qingtong spat and said resolutely, "Don't be too sure." Song Qingshu looked at her with a faint smile. Hua Qingtong's heart skipped a beat. She suddenly thought of how Zhou Zhiruo and Zhao Min also left Zhang Wuji and went into his arms. Could it be that this man knew some sorcery? As she thought about it, she suddenly felt dizzy. At this time, the drug was taking effect, and her whole body was weak. She couldn't stand steadily, and her whole body was spinning. When she came back to her senses, she found that she was already in Song Qingshu's arms. "Let go of me." Hua Qingtong was instantly embarrassed and angry. "If you want to faint, then faint quickly. Why are you still so angry? If you can, walk on your own," Song Qingshu said disdainfully. "I don't have time to accompany you in this cold wind. Isn't it good to go back to your fragrant bed to rest?" Hua Qingtong opened her mouth, but she didn't know how to refute. She felt that her eyelids were getting heavier. It must have been because of the battle with Huado, which caused the drug to completely spread to her limbs and bones. She even felt that she could fall asleep in one breath. But she tried her best not to fall asleep. Who knew what would happen when she fell asleep with this man? Seeing that she was trying hard to keep her eyes open even though she was obviously sleepy, Song Qingshu couldn't help but laugh and say, "Why are you so nervous? Don't tell me you haven't been hugged by a man before." Hua Qingtong turned her head, obviously not wanting to answer this question. But when she turned her head, she happened to touch his chest. Feeling the heat and the sound of his heartbeat, she fell asleep unknowingly. She didn't know how much time had passed, but in a daze, she felt that someone was taking off her clothes. She was instantly terrified. She wanted to resist, but her body was weak. She didn't even have the strength to open her eyes. All she could do was shout, "No, no." The next morning, the sun shone into the room. Hua Qingtong gradually opened her eyes. She realized that she should be lying on a bed in a room. After the initial daze, she suddenly thought of something and hurriedly looked down. She realized that all her clothes had disappeared, and she was now wearing another set of underwear. At this moment, she felt as if she had fallen into an ice cellar. Cold air came out of her body, and she gritted her teeth. "Song Qingshu, you despicable, shameless, and lowly be ****starred. Why are you scolding Brother Song?" At this moment, the door was pushed open, and a gentle female voice rang out. Hua Qingtong turned her head and saw a beautiful girl walk in. She exuded the gentle temperament of a lady from a wealthy family. She was one of the girls who stayed by Song Qingshu's side yesterday. She seemed to be Miss Wang. "That Song guy is despicable and shameless. Of course I have to scold him." Seeing Wang Yiyin's pure face, Hua Qingtong couldn't help but think of her younger sister, Kazli. She immediately felt protective of her. "Miss Wang, you have the beauty of a celestial being. Why are you staying by that demon's side? Quickly leave him, lest his claws reach out to you." "Why should I leave him? Brother Song is a good person." Wang Yiyin looked at her in confusion. Her eyes seemed to be filled with ignorance and inexperience. Chapter 1818. The more Hua Qingtong spoke, the sadder she became. If not for her strong character, she would have cried uncontrollably. But after half a day, Wang Yiyin was still unmoved. She couldn't help but feel sad. Wang Yiyin was probably a woman with the surname Song and was used to such things. It was ridiculous that she tried to persuade her like a fool. Wang Yiyin finally said in confusion, "But I was the one who helped you take off your clothes last night." Hua Qingtong was still sad when she suddenly heard this. She couldn't help but be stunned. Brother Song saved you last night and said that you were drugged. He said that you would be fine after a good night's rest, so he asked me to take care of you. Wang Yuyin was a little embarrassed. I saw that your clothes were a little dirty, so I helped you change them. Also, I'm not very good at taking care of people, so please don't mind. Actually, Song Qingshu didn't want Wang Yuyin to take care of what Qingtong last night. After all, Wang Yuyin was a rich young lady herself. She probably didn't have much experience taking care of people in her life. However, Heaven Mountain Tong Lao and Li Qiushui were people who killed without batting an eye. Naturally, he couldn't let them take care of a junior. As for Li Qinglu, she had to warm his bed, so he could only trouble Wang Yuyin. After all, he couldn't let Jiumaji take care of her. After Wang Yuyin's reminder, Hu Qingtong finally remembered that she smelled a faint sweet fragrance last night. It was the smell of Wang Yuyin's room. As for her clothes, she was indeed a little disheveled when she fought with Huodo yesterday. She lifted the blanket and checked her body. She didn't find anything strange. Instead, she felt a little refreshed. Hu Qingtong realized that she had made a mistake. She couldn't help but look a little embarrassed. "Thank you, Miss Wang. You're welcome." Wang Yuyin smiled sweetly. "Actually, you have a lot of misunderstandings about Brother Song. The condition he made yesterday was actually because he liked your resourcefulness and military skills. It's not what you think." Hu Qingtong was stunned. "How did you know? Did he tell you?" "Of course, he would pretend to be a good person in front of you." Wang Yuyin shook her head. "We know very well whether Big Brother Song is a good person or not. Actually, he purposely used those ambiguous words yesterday to make you back off. We were the ones who forced him to explain himself to you, and I didn't expect him to save you." Hu Qingtong finally understood the whole story and could not help but be stunned for a moment. Wang Yuyin passed the clothes in her hands to her. "Miss, hurry up and change. They're still waiting for us for breakfast." Although Hu Qingtong did not really want to see Song Qingshu, she was only wearing her underwear now and did not feel safe at all. She felt more at ease wearing her clothes. Hence, she got up and started to change. She was a soldier to begin with, and Wang Yuyin was also a woman, so she did not have to hide too much. Beside her, Wang Yuyin's face reddened slightly. She did not expect Wang Yuyin to be so daring. Thinking back to how Wang Yuyin was from the plains, she did not have many reservations in this regard, however. Her attention was quickly attracted by Hui Yao's jade white skin. She couldn't help but exclaim, "Miss Hua, you're so fair." Hu Qingtong smiled. "The people of the western region are fairer, but the girls of Jiangnan have more delicate skin." The two women discussed the private things between women for a while, and their relationship quickly improved. When they reached the front yard, they smiled like sisters. "You've become so close after sleeping with me. I wonder if it will be the same if you sleep with me." Song Qingshu's teasing voice came from not far away. It turned out that the few of them were already sitting in the front yard eating. "Dream boy." Li Qinglu pouted coquettishly and pushed him lightly. Li Qiushui, who was at the side, smiled, while Heavenly Mountain Tong Lao rolled her eyes. Jiumaji, on the other hand, turned a deaf ear and wolfed down his food. He had been away from Tubo for a long time and had already spent most of his traveling expenses. He was a Buddhist after all, so he could not bring himself to rob others to help himself. Hence, it had been a long time since he had eaten such a sumptuous meal. Hu Qingtong had finally changed her opinion of him, but now her impression of him instantly fell to rock bottom. Brother Song. Even Wang Yuyin looked at him reproachfully. She could not understand why Song Qingshu, who had always been gentle and elegant, would purposely make things difficult for Hu Qingtong. Finally, under her persuasion, Hu Qingtong still sat down at the dining table. After a moment of silence, she suddenly said, "You purposely showed this side of you in front of me. Do you not want to form an alliance with the Hui tribe?" She was not the kind of woman with big breasts and no brains. Although she had been annoyed by him from last night until today, she immediately realized that something was wrong after she calmed down. Song Qingshu could be famous all over the world, and it was definitely not because of the lowly shamelessness he showed. A hint of praise flashed in Song Qingshu's eyes. "Miss Hua is indeed the heroine who led the Hui tribe to fight against the Mongolians for so long. You guessed correctly, but this is only one of the reasons. What's the other reason? Hua Qingtong asked curiously. Li Qinglu and Wang Yuyin also looked at him curiously. Even Heaven Mountain Tong Lao and Li Qiushui could not help but turn their heads. Because you are Zhang Wuji's fiancée, Zhang Wuji's woman. I really can't help but want to tease you. Song Qingshu smiled especially happily. Hua Qingtong, Li Qinglu, Wang Yuyin, Heaven Mountain Tong Lao, Li Qiushui. As for Jiumaji, he continued to immerse himself in the sea of delicious food. After this interlude, the group quickly finished their meal and prepared to leave. When Hua Qingtong heard that they were also going to Mount Zhonggu, she suggested going with them. Song Qingshu could not help but laugh. Miss Hua, don't tell me that your hatred has turned into love and you can't bear to leave me? Tui, nothing good comes out of a filthy mouth. Hua Qingtong spat. It just so happens that Senior Yuan and Leader Chun are also going to Mount Zhonggu. I'm just going with you. Also, I have some things to do with you guys. Song Qingshu thought to himself. Could it be that so many people from the pugilistic world had gone there for the exquisite chess set? He did not expect the exquisite chess set to open without him knowing. However, he said, I already told you, don't waste your time trying to persuade me. I will not form an alliance with you. Hua Qingtong pouted. Don't be so smug. I plan to discuss the alliance with the Tufan State Preceptor, Wisdom King, and the Wang family's young miss, Sister Yuyin. Song Qingshu was stunned. Only then did he remember that Tubo and Southern Song were important targets for Hua Qingtong to rope in. Whether it was Jiumaji or Wang Yuyin's Wang family, they both had a certain amount of influence in their respective countries. However, Jiumaji and Wang Yuyin were still a little shocked when they heard this news. Jiumaji seemed to be deep in thought, but Wang Yuyin blushed and said, Sister Hua, I'm just a woman. I can't interfere with the affairs of the imperial court. Hua Qingtong smiled. Sister, don't be unduly humble. Your Wang family is one of the 4 great families of Southern Song, and your influence in the imperial court is very important. When the time comes, you could just introduce me to the elders of your Wang family. Seeing the two of them being intimate, Song Qingshu felt a little depressed. He had not even started poaching Hua Qingtong, but Hua Qingtong had started first. Chapter 1819. Song Qingshu couldn't help but say, I'm afraid you want to come with us not to persuade them, but because Hua Do is still nearby. Hua Qingtong blushed and snorted. What's wrong with killing 2 birds with 1 stone? Wang Yuyin looked at Song Qingshu and said softly, Big brother Song, big sister Hua has come all the way to the Central Plains. She has to work hard for the future of her people, so please don't make things difficult for her. After talking to Hua Qingtong, she had developed a deep respect for this strong heroine and naturally didn't want her to be ridiculed by Song Qingshu. Wang Yuyin rarely begged him. Although Song Qingshu wasn't Duanyu, his heart still melted, and he couldn't continue to make things difficult for Hua Qingtong. Soon, the group finished their breakfast and hurried towards Mount Beating Drum. The small town they had settled in was not far from Mount Beating Drum. The group galloped and finally arrived at Mount Beating Drum the next morning. They went straight up the mountain, and by noon, the terrain was getting higher and higher. Finally, the horses could no longer go up, and the group had to dismount and walk. After walking for an hour, they came to a place where there were dense bamboo trees and the scenery was quiet. Beside the mountain stream was a pavilion made of giant bamboo. The design was exquisite and very ingenious. The bamboo was the pavilion, and the pavilion was the bamboo. At first glance, it was impossible to tell whether it was a bamboo forest or a pavilion. Hua Qingtong was born in Huijiang and couldn't help but admire the exquisite scenery. Even Song Qingshu and Wang Yuyin, who grew up in the Southern Kingdom, were secretly impressed by the quiet design. 2 young men dressed in peasant clothes stood in the pavilion. They walked in front of the group and bowed. Are you here to participate in the exquisite chess game? At the same time, they were secretly shocked. The men were handsome, and the women were charming and graceful. Even the monk was dignified. Were they people from the heavens? The 2 of them were at the age where they were young and vigorous, so they couldn't help but sneak a peek at the beautiful women. Unfortunately, the women's appearance was too outstanding, as if there was an invisible light around them, so they didn't dare to look at them for too long. Song Qingshu smiled faintly as he took in their little movements. He remembered that in his previous life, when he was young, he also wanted to look at beauties but didn't dare to. The young man noticed his faint smile and couldn't help but blush. He quickly took out a firecracker from his bosom and lit it. With a bang, the firecracker shot into the sky. Ordinary firecrackers would make a bang sound and then explode into pieces in midair. However, this firecracker made 3 bang 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 sounds after it flew into the air. Li Qiushui frowned. It seems like they're Su Xing his disciples. Their martial arts aren't that good, and they only know some strange and obscene techniques. She was a little far away, so the young man did not hear her clearly. Otherwise, he would have come out to protect the dignity of the ancestral master. Not long after, a group of people came down from the mountain path. There were more than 30 of them, all of them dressed like farmers, holding long weapons in their hands. When he got closer, he realized that these long objects were not weapons, but bamboo poles. A rope net was tied between every 2 bamboo poles for people to ride on. The young man cupped his hands and said, "My master welcomes guests. Please don't stand on ceremony. Please take a seat." Everyone then realized that these bamboo palanquins were specially used for mountain roads. Li Qiushui snorted, "These people are so slow. I don't have time to waste with them." As soon as she finished speaking, she flew up the mountain like a wisp of smoke. The group of disciples dressed like farmers were stunned. Jiumaji also praised, "Wave like subtle steps. This is one of the best qigong in the world. We can't let that which get ahead of us." Seeing that Li Qiushui had left, Heaven Mountain Tonglao was worried that she would see Wu Yizi first, so she quickly used her qigong to chase after her. Song Qingshu was shocked. These two were so impatient. Let's go up too. Since the 2 of them had already used their qigong to run up the mountain, they naturally could not sit in the bamboo palanquin and follow behind slowly, so they could only use their qigong to follow behind. Jiumaji's martial arts was profound, so when he used his qigong, he was as agile as flying on this rugged mountain. Li Qinglu also knew subtle steps, and, as Li Qiushui's disciple, her martial arts was also one of the best among the younger generation, so she naturally had no problem. Wang Yuyin was the only one who did not know any martial arts. Looking at the steep and rugged mountain path, she felt a little troubled. Although Li Qinglu wanted to help, her skills were limited. She could do it alone, but it was beyond her power to bring another person along. Actually, it was always Li Qiushui who carried Wang Yuyin through mountains and rivers when they encountered similar situations along the way. Unfortunately, she was about to see Wu Yizi today, so she left her granddaughter aside. "Meng Lang, help her," Li Qinglu said to Song Qingshu when she saw her cousin's dilemma. Nowadays, on the rugged mountain road, the so-called help could not be avoided without hugging and hugging. Actually, Song Qingshu came from the future, so this kind of physical contact was not a big deal. However, considering the conservative culture of this era, and also in front of Li Qinglu, he really could not be too intimate with his sister-in-law. But now that Li Qinglu took the initiative and Wang Yin's face was slightly red, but she did not refuse, Song Qingshu naturally did not hesitate. He came in front of her and said, "Miss Wang, let me bring you up." Wang Yuyin was a little embarrassed. "Thank you, Brother Song." At the same time, she felt a little strange. Why did she have to thank him when he was clearly taking advantage of her? At this time, Song Qingshu's thoughts had already flown to the exquisite chess game, and he was thinking about why so many martial artists had appeared. Naturally, he had no time to care about the girl's thoughts at this time. He grabbed her slender waist, and the soft touch made his heart skip a beat. If it was Duan Yu, he would probably have a nosebleed by now, right? Song Qingshu thought without malice. At the same time, he tiptoed, and with his big sleeves fluttering, he took the lead. He did not run in a hurry, but on this steep mountain road, he seemed to be floating in the wind. His feet did not touch the ground, and in an instant, he disappeared into the bamboo forest in front of him. "What, Qing Tong?" who was behind him, had been a little dissatisfied with him. In addition, she had only heard about his martial arts, but had never seen him fight. Now that she saw his celestial-like Qigong, she could not help but secretly admire him. Although this person is a little annoying, his Qigong is really good. In the entire Huijiang, no, even in the Ming Dynasty, Zhang Jiaozhu probably does not have such Qigong. Since Song Qingshu had already moved, Li Qinglu naturally used wave-like subtle steps to follow him. Hu Qingtong had no choice but to use Qigong to follow them. Unfortunately, although her martial arts were good, it could only be considered good. How could she be compared to people who stood at the top of the Jianghu, like Song Qingshu and Jiamaji? Even if she tried her best and broke out in a sweat, the distance between them and the people in front of her was getting farther and farther, and soon they disappeared from her sight. All these years, Hu Qingtong had been shouldering the heavy responsibility of protecting the tribe. Unfortunately, the Mongolians were getting stronger, and the Hui tribe was getting weaker. She could not see any hope at all. This time, she had risked everything to come to the Central Plains, hoping that all the countries would unite to fight against the Mongolians. But as a leader, how could she not know that all the countries were thinking for themselves? The hope of them joining forces was extremely slim. Even then, she'd always been forcefully enduring it. But now, there wasn't a single trace of human presence in the entire wilderness, and she seemed as if she'd been abandoned here by the heavens and the earth. When she thought about the heavy burden on her shoulders, she couldn't help but feel slightly sorrowful, and tears couldn't help but flow down her cheeks. Chapter 1820. Hu Qingtong hurriedly wiped away the tears on her face. She wished there was a hole in the ground to hide in. Why did you come back? I didn't want to come back either. It was Miss Wang who was worried about her sister Hua, so she begged me to come back to help you. Song Qingshu sighed as if he was extremely impatient. Brother Song, Wang Yuyin said softly, you were the one who was worried about Sister Hua and had to blame it on me. Song Qingshu smiled embarrassedly and stretched out his hand to Hu Qingtong. Come, I'll take you there with me. Hu Qingtong immediately turned her head away as if she didn't see his invitation. Song Qingshu immediately laughed. If I'm not wrong, Huido is also here to participate in the Jinlong chess game. When the time comes, you'll meet him alone. Before he could finish, Hu Qingtong reached out and grabbed him. But she immediately realized the awkwardness and explained with a red face. I was only tricked by him last time. I'm not afraid of meeting him again. Really? Song Qingshu originally wanted to tease her, but when he saw the tears on her cheeks glistening under the morning sun, he couldn't bear to say anything more. With one hand holding Wang Yuyin and the other holding Hu Qingtong, Song Qingshu didn't seem to be affected at all. He walked through the mountains as if they were walking on flat ground. Soon, they went over a mountain and entered a valley. The valley was filled with pine trees. When a mountain wind blew, the pine trees rustled like waves. After walking for about a mile in the forest, they arrived in front of 3 wooden houses. They saw 2 people sitting opposite each other under a big tree in front of the house. The person on the left was followed by several people. When they got closer, they saw a big stone between the 2 sitting people. There was a chessboard on it, and the 2 were playing a game. The person on the right was a short and skinny old man, while the person on the left was a young man. Song Qingshu recognized the young man as Duan Yu. The people standing behind him were Zhu Danshun and the other guards. Reverend Yiding and Ku Rong stood a little further away, as if they were afraid that their identities would disturb the 2. He saw that the chessboard was carved on a large blue stone. The black and white pieces were sparkling and translucent. Each side had placed more than 100 pieces. The short old man picked up a black piece and suddenly raised his eyebrows, as if he had seen a miraculous and urgent change in the chess game. Duan Yu held a white chess piece in his hand and pondered. Song Qingshu saw Li Qiushui and Tianshan Tong standing at the side. So he walked over and asked, "Why did you stop?" Li Qiushui said, "There are only Su Xinghe and his disciples here. Su Xinghe has always been stubborn. If we interrogate him, we might not be able to get Wu Yazi's whereabouts. So let's see what he has up his sleeve first." As Su Xinghe's mistress, she naturally understood the personalities of her husband's disciples. At this moment, in order to avoid being recognized, she also wore a veil. As for the heavenly mountain maiden, she was still young, but Su Xing, he was already old. How could he connect this little lowly with his martial uncle? Why did Wu Yazi gather all these people to play chess? Tianshan, Tong mumbled to herself. Song Qing-shu naturally knew his goal, but it was not convenient for him to say it this time. He looked at the chessboard, but unfortunately, he was not good at chess and could not see anything. As if seeing through his confusion, Wang Yin explained, "Young Master Duan, I'm afraid the situation is not too good." Song Qing-shu laughed inwardly. He naturally knew that Duan Yu was too kind and did not want to give up a single chess piece, so there was no way he could solve this exquisite chess game. After a while, Duan Yu suddenly said, "All right, let's play." As he said this, he placed a white piece on the chessboard. Su Xinghe's face lit up, and he nodded as if he was praising Duan Yu. He placed a black piece, and Duan Yu had already figured out all the moves, so he moved on to the white piece. Su Xinghe then placed a black piece, and after a dozen moves, Duan Yu let out a long sigh and shook his head, saying, "Old Mister's moves are exquisite and profound. I cannot solve them." Seeing that Su Xinghe had won, Duan Yu's face turned gloomy, and he said, "Young Master's thoughts are very precise, and your moves have reached an extremely high level. It's just that you did not think further. What a pity, what a pity. AI, what a pity, what a pity." He said the word pity 4 times in a row, and his regret was indeed very deep. Duan Yu picked up the 10 white pieces from the chessboard and placed them into the wooden box. Su Xing, he also picked up a dozen black pieces. The chessboard was still in its original position. Duan Yu retreated to the side, looking at the chessboard in a daze, and said, "This exquisite piece is the one I saw in the cave on Wuliang Mountain. This wise man must have a close relationship with the fairy sister in the cave. When I get the chance, I must ask him secretly, but I must not let others hear. Otherwise, if everyone goes to see the fairy sister, wouldn't that be blasphemy?" Suddenly, his eyes swept over to Song Qingshu's side, and his face lit up with joy. He ran over excitedly and said, "Fairy sister, Miss Wang, Miss Li, you're here too." Wang Yin nodded slightly in acknowledgement. Li Qiushui was currently preoccupied with Wu Yazi and did not have the energy to pay attention to this rash boy. Li Qinglu was leaning against Song Qingshu and did not respond to this rash boy. Su Xinghe's gaze swept across the entire field, and he said, "This exquisite chess game was created by my late master. My late master spent 3 years of painstaking effort to set it up, and he hoped that someone in the world of chess would be able to solve it. I've been studying it for 30 years, but I haven't been able to understand it." He then glanced at Ku Rong, Reverend Yidong, Duan Yu, and the others before he continued. "Master Ku Rong, Reverend Yidong, you're well-versed in Zen, and you know that the essence of Zen lies in epiphany. Years of hard work might not be able to achieve an epiphany at first sight from someone with a long-rooted wisdom heart. Their chess skills are also average, and talented children of 8 or 9 years old can often defeat first-rate masters. Although I can't understand it, there are many talented people in the world, so they might be able to solve it. My late master left this wish, and if someone can solve it and fulfill his wish, he'll be very pleased to know that even though he's no longer in this world. If that's the case, I'll give it a try." A voice was heard coming from behind the pine forest. Song Qingshu turned to look and saw Chen Zhou, Yuan Xiao, Yuan Zi, and the others, as well as the monk from Shaolin Temple. A disciple had already run to Su Xinghe's side and whispered in his ear. Su Xinghe nodded. "So it's the Red Flower Society's Zhongdao Zhu Chun. Please come in." Then, with a wave of his hand, he pushed a few big stone stools to the side in front of the Shaolin monks. "Greetings, Abbot Xianxi. Please forgive us for our poor hospitality." Xianxi returned a salute. "Amipa, Mr. Su, you don't have to entertain us. You should concentrate on the chess game." Su Xinghe nodded his head and made an inviting gesture towards Chen Jialua. After Chen Jialua bowed, He picked up a white piece and placed it on the go position. That was the key to breaking this exquisite. Su Xinghe was pleasantly surprised. Chun Zendozu's chess skill is superb, he said. The old man is very happy. The black piece fell on the go position 8-8. Chun Jialua pondered for a moment before placing his white piece on the go position. He came from a scholarly family and was well-versed in both literature and martial arts. Naturally, his chess skills were not weak. Su Xinghe smiled and placed the black piece on the go position. While they were playing chess, Yuan Zi trotted over and said, "Sister Hua, why are you here? We've been looking for you everywhere." Hua Qingtong said apologetically, "I thought I would come back soon, so I didn't tell you. Later, I was delayed by something. I'm really sorry." Yuan Zi glanced at Song Qingshu suspiciously and said, "Did Song bully you and put you under house arrest? Don't be afraid. Master is here. We can ask the Shaolin monks to help you." Hua Qingtong shook her head awkwardly and said, "No, he is very kind to me and saved my life." Even Song Qingshu couldn't help looking at her. He really didn't expect that she would put in a good word for him. Chapter 1821. Even Song Qingshu did not expect Hua Qingtong to speak up for him, let alone Yuan Zi. It was no wonder that she would have such a guess. After all, although she hated Song Qingshu, she had to admit that he was very charming. The fact that he was surrounded by so many beautiful women was proof of that. She thought that Hua Qingtong had been charmed by him after just a short time. Hua Qingtong was startled. She glared at her shyly and angrily. "What nonsense are you talking about?" Yuan Zi curled her lips. "If you don't like him, then don't like him. Why are you so fierce?" Hearing her words, Song Qingshu was a little happy. She was simply helping him. Even Yuan Zi became more pleasing to his eyes. "Let's go back to Chief Chun." Yuan Zi reached out to pull her. However, Hua Qingtong was a little hesitant. "I still have something to do here. I'll come back later." It was not that she was reluctant to leave Song Qingshu. It was just that Wang Yuyin had been taking care of her along the way. She did not want to go back in a hurry. Otherwise, she would be suspected of burning the bridge after crossing it. Moreover, she still had to try to persuade Jiumaji and Wang Yuyin. Yuan Zi curled her lips. She felt that there was something fishy about it. However, in front of so many people, she did not say anything. She could only return to Chun Jialua's side unhappily. At this moment, Chun Jialua thought about it. He picked up a white chess piece and placed it in the chess game. Su Xinghe smiled faintly and placed down another black stone. Chun Jialua frowned slightly. Then, he placed another white chess piece. Su Xinghe answered again. Chun Jialua had thought about this game for a long time. He was confident that he had come up with a solution. However, Su Xinghe's move was beyond his expectation. His original plan had failed. He had to think about it from the beginning. After a long time, he placed another chess piece. Su Xinghe seemed to have expected it. He followed without hesitation. The two of them, one fast and the other slow, played more than 20 chess pieces. Jiumaji suddenly laughed and said, "Chief Chun, admit defeat." Chun Jialua said angrily, "You're messing around. Then try to solve it." Jiumaji smiled and said, "No one in the world can solve this game. It's used to fool people. I know my limitations and do not want to waste my energy on useless things. Head leader Chun, you can't even shake off my entanglement in the corner. Do you still want to accomplish anything when you return to the Central Plains?" He and Song Qingshu were on good terms. Along the way, he had heard about the grudge between the Red Flower Society and Song Qingshu. So he wanted to help his friend. Therefore, he deliberately ridiculed him. Chun Jialua's heart trembled. For a moment, all sorts of feelings welled up in his heart. He kept thinking about the two sentences he had said, "You can't even get rid of my entanglement in the corner." What else do you want to accomplish when you return to the Central Plains? His vision gradually blurred. The white and black pieces on the chessboard seemed to have turned into the numerous brothers of the Red Flower Society. There is a group of people in the east, a group of people in the west. You surround me, I surround you. They are entangled in an endless battle. Chunjilua watched helplessly as his white flag and white armored troops were surrounded by the black flag and black armored enemies. They charged left and right, but were unable to break out of the tight encirclement. He was getting more and more anxious. My Red Flower Society's destiny has come to an end. Everything is in vain. All my life I have done my utmost, but in the end I have fallen apart. It's my fate. What more can I say? Suddenly he let out a loud cry and drew his sword to slit his own throat. Yuan Zi, Yuan Xiao, and the others were staring at him without blinking, while Chun Jialua stood there speechless, his expression uncertain. Nobody had expected that he would suddenly draw his sword to slit his own throat. Yuan Zi and the others rushed forward to rescue him, but they had lost their internal energy and were one step too slow. Moreover, Yuan Xiao was still far away from him, so there was nothing he could do. Reverend Eating pointed his index finger and called out, "You can't do that!" Swish! The sword in Chun Jialua's hand swayed and fell to the ground. Jiumaji laughed and said, "Reverend Eating, what a good move, the solitary Yang finger." He had fought with the eminent monks of Dali's Tianlong Temple. Their attainment in the solitary Yang finger was very profound, but compared to Reverend Eating, they were still a notch behind. The solitary Yang finger, when used by Reverend Eating, was nearly as powerful as the Six Meridians' divine sword. Chun Jialua's sword fell from his hand. He was startled and woke up from the illusion. Yuan Zi pulled his hand and shook it repeatedly, calling out, "Big Brother Chun, what's the big deal if you can't solve the chess game? Why did you commit suicide?" She could not help but feel her eyes turning red. Song Qingshu witnessed all this from a distance. He wondered if Yuan Zi had fallen in love with Chun Jialua. This was really interesting. Reverend Eating chanted the name of Buddha and said, "Amitba, I wonder what Zongda Ozichin is thinking about. He is only one step away from becoming a demon. I hope Gongzi can be more open-minded and not be too obsessed." Chun Jialua returned the salute and said, "Thank you, Reverend, for pointing out the right path." Yuan Xiao also stepped forward to thank Reverend Eating. Then he said to Chun Jialua, "This chess game is fascinating. It seems to contain some kind of illusion. You don't have to worry about it anymore." Chun Jialua nodded. He still had lingering fears about what happened earlier, so he dare not try it again indeed. Su Xinghe was displeased when he heard them belittling his master's exquisite chess game. But Master Kurong and his master were old friends, so he could not say anything. He could only scoff and look around before he asked, "Is there anyone else who wants to solve the chess game?" Many people were initially eager to try it, but after witnessing how Chanzhou suddenly went crazy, they dared not go forward because they could not figure out what was going on. "I'd like to give it a try." At this moment, a confident voice was heard coming from the pine forest. Hu Qingtong trembled. When she looked in the direction of the voice, she realized that it was none other than Huido, that be asterisk starred. Nonetheless, Hu Qingtong was not alone this time, as he was accompanied by a few strangely dressed people. She had fought with the Mongolians several times, so she soon recognized one of them as Jinluan Fuwang, the Mongolian national master, while the others were powerhouses under Kublai's command, including Xiaoxiang Zi, Nimixing, and Yin Kashi. When Huido saw Song Qingshu and the others, he could not help but complain to himself. He no longer looked proud like when he first showed up, but he approached Hu Qingshu and bowed at him with respect. "I didn't know Prince Song was here too. Please forgive me for being impolite." When Jinluan Fuwang and the others saw Song Qingshu too, they had wonderful expressions on their faces. It was worth noting that Xiaoxiang Zi, Nimixing, and the others were insufferably arrogant back then, but they were defeated by Song Qingshu in front of everyone. In fact, even Jinluan Fuwang had lost to him before, so they naturally felt uneasy when they saw the fated devil. Fortunately, Jinluan Fuwang had cultivated the dragon-elephant prajna technique, thus he was much more confident than before. Thus he was the first to recover. "Greetings, Prince Song. It's been a long time since we last met, but you're still as elegant as ever, young master." Hu Qingtong widened her eyes. She had seen those powerhouses on the battlefield, and they were all insufferably arrogant and had high statuses in the Mongolian military. She did not expect them to be so unruly in front of Song Qing-shu and be so respectful. How exactly is this man? Chapter 1822. Song Qing-shu smiled and replied, "Fu Wang's divine aura is restrained. He must have already mastered the dragon-elephant prajna technique." Jinluan Fu Wang's face flashed with pride. He was quite confident in the dragon-elephant prajna technique, but after fighting with Song Qing-shu a few times, he knew that Song Qing-shu was unfathomable. So he didn't dare to be careless. Compared to young master's divine technique, it's nothing. The surrounding people all looked at Jinluan Fu Wang. Ever since he entered the Central Plains, he was quite arrogant, but now he was actually lowering his own prestige in front of the young man. It was quite unimaginable. Why did Fu Wang return to the Central Plains? Song Qing-shu asked curiously. Jinluan Fu Wang looked hesitant, but he still lowered his voice and replied, "I won't hide it from young master. This time we were ordered by His Highness to investigate the whereabouts of Princess Huaji. The Mongolians and the Golden Snake Camp had already made peace. The Ryong Palace and Song Qing-shu had a very good relationship. They could be considered half one of their own, so there was no need to hide this from him." Huazheng. Song Qing-shu was startled. During the Southern Song Dynasty's northern expedition, Guojing was abandoned and was seriously injured. It was Huazheng who took him away to be treated. Could it be that something went wrong? As if he saw his confusion, Jinluan Fu Wang continued to explain, "We received news that Princess Huazheng seemed to have been here not long ago. So we came here to investigate and coincidentally to saw Huido participating in the Jinlong chess game. So we came together." Seeing Huido standing respectfully at the side, Song Qing-shu smiled. "Since young master is interested, why don't you give it a try? The Jinlong chess game didn't say that it was only open to Han people." Hearing this, Huido was overjoyed. "Thank you, young master. I will go and give it a try." At this time, Song Qing-shu was thinking, why would Huazheng appear nearby? Suddenly, he had an idea. Could it be that she was asking Miracle Dr. Shui to treat Guojing? At this moment, Jinluan Fu Wang suddenly took another look at Hui Qingtong. His expression changed slightly as he said, "This is the yellow jadeite robe from the Hui Jiang. Chun Jiao, Yuan Shi Xiao, Yuan Zi," and the others had moved closer to Hui Qingtong, fearing that the Mongolians would launch a sudden attack. However, they were not sure that they could protect Hui Qingtong, as the Mongolians were so powerful that they could only count on the help of Shaolin Temple. Chun Jiao had a good relationship with the Shaolin Temple, so he subconsciously looked at them for help. Unfortunately, the people of the Shaolin Temple did not seem to see what was happening here. They were all focused on the exquisite chess game, leaving him at a loss for what to do. At this moment, Song Qing-shu's faint voice sounded, "Miss Hua is my friend." Jinluan Fu Wang was stunned. He did not expect that the other party would protect Hui Qingtong in public. Hui Qingtong had led the Hui tribe to fight against the Mongols several times. He was at the top of the list of people that the Mongols wanted to get rid of. However, Song Qing-shu's martial arts were unfathomable, and there were other experts here. Jinluan Fu Wang did not want to take the risk, so he said with a smile, "Since she is Prince Song's friend, she is naturally our friend too." He had already made up his mind. Song Qing-shu could protect her now, but could he protect her forever? As long as she was alone, he would capture her. When he returned to the Mongols, the Khan and the prince would definitely reward him generously. At the same time, he could not help but complain to himself, thinking that Princess Xiao Min was already the most beautiful woman in Mongolia. But this guy was still not satisfied with her favor. He even hooked up with the yellow robe of the Hui tribe. The forces behind these two women were destined to be enemies. He would like to see how this guy would deal with them. Hui Qingtong had been gathering her strength, thinking that there was going to be a fierce battle. She did not think that Song Qing-shu would be able to resolve the crisis with just a few words. She did not want to accept his favor, but she was still the leader of a tribe. She knew that her safety was not only her own, it was also related to the entire tribe, so she did not let her emotions affect her decisions and acquiesced to this kind of relationship. "Fu Wang, you should take a look at your disciple. This Xinlong chess game has a demonic nature. Just now, Chen Duozhu almost committed suicide while playing chess. I think your disciple is not far from it, Song Qingshu said jokingly. Huido was a time bomb that he had prepared for Temujin. Song Qingshu naturally did not want him to die here, but in front of so many people, it was not good for him to personally save him, so he could only remind him. At first, Jinlu and Fuwang did not think much of it, but when he saw Huido's face turn red and green, he finally realized that something was wrong. He saw Huido roar, pick up his fan, and stab it at his throat. His fan was made of metal. If it hit, he would definitely die on the spot. Jinlu and Fuwang hurriedly threw out a bronze wheel, knocking the fan out of Huido's hand. Then he leapt to Huido's side and sealed an acupuncture point on his body. What are you doing here? I don't know either. Huido's face was blank. Song Qingshu smiled slightly. Whether it was Chen Jialuo or Huido, they both had too many thoughts hidden in their hearts. They had too many things to accomplish, so they were easily confused by the Xinlong chess game. This was also the reason why Murong Fu also fell for the same trick in the original work. Jinlu and Fuwang glared at Su Xinghe and said angrily, "What the hell is this Xinlong chess game of yours doing?" As he said this, he took the golden wheel and smashed it against the chessboard. With his strength, if this hit landed, even if the chessboard was made of stone, it would still be smashed to pieces. Su Xinghe naturally did not want to see his master's hard work go to waste. He quickly reached out and slapped the side of the golden wheel, but as soon as he touched it, it was as if he had been struck by lightning. He spat out a mouthful of blood. Everyone was shocked. Just now, Su Xinghe had pushed the large stone stool as if it was light for the Shaolin monks. They could see that his martial arts were profound, but they did not think that he would lose to Jinlu and Fuwang in such a short time. However, with his obstruction, the golden wheel's momentum slowed down a bit. At this time, a ribbon suddenly shot out from the ground and hit the center of the wheel. With a bang, the rapidly spinning golden wheel was knocked into a nearby tree, almost cutting it in half. Could it be that Xiao Longnu has come? Jinluan was startled. He had suffered several losses in the hands of the other party. He had almost developed a psychological shadow towards Xiao Longnu and Yanghua. This kind of ribbon was very similar to Xiao Longnu's silver bell golden lock. He turned around and saw that the person who attacked was a woman standing next to Song Qingshu. Her face was covered with a veil, and her appearance could not be seen clearly. Although her figure was graceful and charming, she should be older than Xiao Longnu. Just who is this woman? Even though I was obstructed by Su Xinghe, to be able to send my golden wheel flying with just a soft ribbon, this level of martial arts is not to be underestimated. Jinlu and Fuwang was not the only one who was shocked. Everyone present was extremely shocked. Originally, when they saw her standing next to Song Qingshu, they thought that she was another one of his lovers. Other than cursing her in envy, jealousy, and hatred, no one paid much attention to her. But who would have thought that she would be an extremely skilled martial artist? When Xiancheng saw all of this, he did not have a good feeling. He thought that it was one thing for him to lose to Song Qingshu, but now even one of his lover's martial arts is not below mine. He did not want his opponent to be in the limelight again. So he stood in front of the chessboard. Let me test this exquisite chessboard and see if it has any demonic properties. Chapter 1823. Oh, so it's great master Xiancheng. Su Xinghe was a little surprised. After all, Xiancheng's status was very high, and he really didn't expect him to participate. Xiancheng smiled and said, "Could it be that there is a sect age requirement for those who participate in the exquisite chess game?" Su Xinghe shook his head. "No, great master, please." He was very clear why his master had set up the exquisite chess game, and he had already said that there were no restrictions, as long as they could solve the game. Xiancheng nodded and didn't say anything else. He picked up a white piece and started playing. Su Xinghe smiled faintly. He already knew every move in this game of chess by heart. His opponent's move was no different from the previous few, so he immediately responded with a black chess piece. Xiancheng quickly made another move, and Su Xinghe had a whole new level of respect for him. He nodded and said, "Not bad. Great master's move is very brilliant. Let's see if we can break through and open a path." He made a black move and sealed off the path. Xiancheng made another move, and Su Xinghe smiled when he saw it. Chun Jialua looked at him from afar and hurriedly said, "I'm afraid this move won't work." He had made the same move just now, and almost pulled out his sword to commit suicide. His relationship with Shaolin Temple had always been good, and seeing Xiancheng make the same mistake, he couldn't bear it and hurriedly reminded him. Xiancheng nodded at him. "Thank you for the reminder, Chief Chun. This poor monk knows his limits." Su Xinghe glared at Chunzhou. A true gentleman does not speak when watching chess. The exquisite chess game was related to his master's important matter, so he naturally didn't want other people to blindly interfere. Chun Jialua's face heated up. His actions just now were indeed ungentlemanly, and he awkwardly apologized. "Senior, please forgive me." Su Xinghe snorted and ignored him, continuing to focus on the game. In the distance, Song Qingshu secretly frowned. Seeing how confident Xiancheng is, could it be that they already know the way to solve the exquisite chess game? Xiancheng quickly made another 20 moves, and Huidou, who was watching from the side, sneered, "What's so great about that? Isn't he the same as me just now?" Su Xinghe also revealed a look of disappointment, but he still said fairly, "There are still some differences. Just now, the little prince took a long time to make each move, but great master Xiancheng made each move very quickly." At this point, he felt a little suspicious. Why does it feel like the other party has memorized every move? Li Qiushui also frowned and said, "This monk is a little weird." Song Qingshu nodded in agreement. Suddenly, he asked curiously, "Do you know how to solve this exquisite chess game?" Li Qiushui looked at Heaven Mountain Tonglao proudly and said, "Of course. When Wu Yizi and I became husband and wife at the foot of Wuliang Mountain, we loved each other so much that we played chess and swords for fun. Wu Yizi and I created this Zhenlong together." Hearing this, Heavenly Mountain Tonglao was indeed a little angry. Nonsense. Wu Yizi is indeed proficient in zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. But what about you? If we really want to play chess, you might not be able to beat me. Li Qiushui wasn't angry. "Senior sister, are you jealous of the days we Yazi and I spent together? Sigh, it's really nostalgic." Heavenly Mountain Tonglao was so angry that her face turned red. Unfortunately, she didn't know how to refute and could only spit, "Bitch." Then she turned her head away and didn't want to see her proud face anymore. At this moment, Xiancheng placed a chess piece on the board. Su Xinghe couldn't help but say, "Nonsense, nonsense. You killed a white chess piece on your own. How can you play chess like this?" He was already obsessed with zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. Moreover, it was his master's painstaking effort. Therefore, seeing the other party act so recklessly, he was also angry and didn't even care about the reputation of Shaolin Temple. Everyone looked over and saw that Xiancheng's chess piece was placed in a white chess piece that was surrounded by black chess pieces. This white chess piece originally still had a breath. Although the black chess pieces could eat it at any time, as long as the black chess pieces didn't have the time to eat it, there was still a chance of survival. He struggled bitterly because of this. Now, he had eaten his own white chess piece. In chess, there was no such thing as suicide. With the white chess piece dead, the white square was completely wiped out. When Jiu Maji, Chanzhou, Duanyu, Huidou, and the others saw this, they couldn't help but burst into laughter. Isn't that a joke? Unlike their current state of mind, Song Qingshu's expression changed greatly. He understood that the key to solving Zhenlong's mystery was to fight back from the jaws of death. As expected, Xiancheng said, "As the saying goes, if I don't go to hell, who will?" This humble monk was inspired by the mercy of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva and thought of this move. Is that so? Su Xinghe saw that he spoke with confidence and did not dare to look down on him anymore. He took down a white chess piece from the chessboard and placed a black chess piece intending to see if he was deliberately mystifying things. "Master, please." Xiansheng was calm and collected. He reached into the box, took out a white chess piece, and placed it on the chessboard. He placed it on the empty space that had appeared after taking away the white chess piece. This move actually made a lot of sense. In these 30 years, Su Xinghe had thoroughly understood the hundreds and thousands of variations of this game of chess. No matter what the opponent did, they could not surpass the range of what he had already understood. But Xiansheng's suicidal move caused him to kill a large white piece, which went against the fundamental principles of chess. Anyone who understood chess principles would never make such a move. It was no different from raising a sword to slit one's throat, to commit suicide with a knife. Who would have thought that after he made his move and killed a large piece of his own white chess piece, the situation suddenly became much better. Although the black pieces had a great advantage, the white pieces now had room to maneuver and were no longer tied up like before, unable to attend to one thing and lose sight of the other. This new situation was something that Su Xing he had never even dreamed of. After pondering for a long time, he decided to play black. The surrounding people also noticed that something was amiss. They discussed the changes in the chess game in low voices. Xiansheng placed his pieces on the even position, the 39 packs and the 28 packs. Previously, Su Xinghe had always been confident in his moves, while Duan Yu, Chen Jialuo, and the others would have to think for a long time before they placed their pieces. Unexpectedly, it was his turn to have to think for a long time before every move. Following this, Xiansheng placed his stones on the go position 5, 6, and took 3 of the black stones. The surrounding people cried out in alarm one after another. Turned out they had already realized that the white stones were steadily gaining the upper hand and were pressing forward. Everybody thought in their hearts, "I can also think of these moves. Everything is difficult at the beginning. Even the first strange move, I can't think of it." Xiansheng made a few more strokes before putting his palms together. "Umitba, this little monk should be able to resolve it, right?" Su Xing, he was dumbstruck. He nodded his head and said, "My teacher set up this trap, and no one has been able to solve it for decades. I am very grateful that the divine monk has solved this trap." He thought of his teacher's plan, but this person's martial arts skills were not lower than his teacher's, so he felt that it was strange. But all of this was his teacher's orders. Since that was the case, it could only mean that it was the will of heaven. In the end, he still walked to the 3 wooden houses not far behind him and said, "Divine monk, please enter." Xiansheng nodded and walked straight to the wooden houses. With one palm strike, he created a large hole in the wooden house and was about to walk inside. "Wait!" Song Qingshu called out to stop him. What a joke! He knew that Wu Yizi was inside. If he allowed Wu Yizi to impart all his skills to Xiansheng, Wu Yizi would immediately be at the end of his rope. Wouldn't the women around him go crazy? If that happened, Spirit Vulture Palace and Class 1 Hall would no longer be his. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.